Lord, we have important work to get done today. We need wisdom and guidance and discernment, perseverance and understanding, compassion. The things that this bill will touch, the lives it will touch across this nation, only you know the full extent of the impact of what we will do today. Give us your wisdom to get it done right. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. I move on behalf of the House that the distinguished gentleman from Kansas, the Honorable Pat Roberts, Chairman of the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry, be designated as the chairman of this conference. Without objection, so ordered. Before yielding to him, I would also like to note that upon completion of this farm bill, Chairman Roberts will be the first member of Congress to have shepherded a final farm bill through both the House and the Senate. Congratulations, Mr. Roberts. Mr. Roberts. And the committee is now in your able hands, sir.
I thank Chairman Conway for passing the gavel to the Senate for the duration of this Farm Bill conference. I recall a day back in March 1996 when, as the House Agriculture Committee Chairman, I passed the gavel to the Chairman of the Senate Agriculture Committee at that time, Senator Richard Lugar. Today, we continue that tradition as we work to agree on legislation that is critically important to our nation, the 2018 Farm Bill. This is the 8th Farm Bill that I have been part of during my time in public service. The circumstances are always a bit different, but we all have a history of working together in a bipartisan, bicameral fashion to find solutions and to get farm bills done. If it was important then, it is even important more so now. Hang with me. Not literally. The goal, the responsibility, the absolute requirement is to provide farmers, ranchers, growers, and everyone within America's agriculture and food value chain certainty and predictability during these very difficult times. This is paramount to many other issues and concerns. I understand these issues. I understand these concerns. Let me repeat that, however. Getting a farm bill done is paramount to any other issue and concern. Both the House and Senate recognize this need. Clearly, both have taken the steps to get us to this point today. We're very close to the finish line, but we still have a lot of work to do. Quite frankly, a lot of compromise that remains to be done. It is not an exaggeration to say that our nation's food and fiber production capability hangs in the balance with what we do here on this legislation. Time is of the essence. Let us work together to get this done. As we go through the titles, you have the text of both bills in the conference documents right in front of you. We are endeavoring to craft a 2018 Farm Bill that meets the needs of producers across all regions and all crops. All of agriculture is struggling, not just one or two commodities. We must have a bill that works across our great nation. We must ensure that our voluntary conservation programs are keeping farmland in operation while protecting our agricultural lands, forests, and other natural resources. Let us not forget that in a few short decades, the global population will top 9 billion people. Staff should not put in Scotch tape on these pages. Agriculture production will need to double in the near future to meet that demand. Accomplishing this task requires efficiency, not just on the farm and ranch, but also in government. We must focus on program integrity and strengthen common sense investments to strengthen our nutrition programs, to ensure the pathway to long-term success of those in need of assistance. I share the goal of promoting work and self-sufficiency among SNAP participants. And we can find ways to work toward that goal by improving the program. Investments in employment and training that demonstrate success, partnerships with the private sector, and more accountability can all help get folks back on the path to long-term employment. We can find ways to provide tools to states, to people, to employers, and to nonprofits that will get people working again. And we can further improve the integrity of the nutrition program with changes to the verification process, better quality control, oversight, and elimination of much of the state performance bonuses. These types of measures would bring more accountability to the program and will lead to reduced error rates, which have resulted in billions of dollars in improper SNAP payments. And today, with trade and market uncertainty, to say the least, we must provide certainty for our trade promotion and research programs. Feeding an increasing global population is not simply an agriculture challenge, it is a national security challenge. This means we need to grow more and raise more with fewer resources. That will take investments in research, new technology, lines of credit, and proper risk management. It takes the government providing the tools and then getting out of the producer's way. We must make tough choices and be judicious with the scarce resources we have. Each of our committees have asked tough questions and re-examined programs to determine their effectiveness over the last several years. We must ensure programs accomplish their fundamental purposes. Agriculture, and specifically the Farm Bill, has consistently answered the call to do more with less. And to those who say passing a Farm Bill in this environment is a daunting task, I say together, we can get it done. As I traveled across Kansas and met with folks from back home over the last several weeks, our producers are yet again facing the wrath of Mother Nature. Many producers are not looking forward to harvest, let alone the tough conversations with their lenders in the weeks ahead. But we must embrace the attitude of our producers, optimism and ingenuity. A farmer doesn't plant the seed in the ground without the faith and optimism of harvesting a good crop. That means we must do our job. We must agree to a bill that provides those same men and women the much-needed certainty and predictability they deserve, that they truly deserve. We must commit to making the tough choices and compromising to find common ground to develop the best bill possible under these circumstances. I now recognize the chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, Congressman Mike Conaway, the distinguished chairman, for his opening remarks.
Well, thank you, Chairman Roberts. Ranking members Peterson and Stabenow, and fellow members of the Conference Committee, good morning. And a good morning to all who have gathered here today to discuss a matter of great importance and urgency, quite frankly, the 2018 Farm Bill. Many of you read last week that the USDA is projecting that net farm income will be down another 13% this year. Producers' incomes are roughly half of what they were when the Farm Bill conferees last met in October of 2013. Put simply, we are in the fifth year of a severe recession in farm country, and it doesn't appear to be letting up anytime soon. Farm bankruptcies are up 39% over the last 2 years alone. Yet in the face of these conditions, USDA also projects that spending on the farm safety net will actually drop significantly as the Agriculture Risk Coverage Program withers under the strain of the current farm economy. While the Farm Bill covers a wide range of reported policies, I submit that it is the primary job of this Conference Committee to provide, as Chairman Roberts would say, the predictability and stability of a farm safety net. Thus far in the process, we have honored calls from across the country to do no harm to crop insurance. Back in 2000, Senator Roberts and his colleagues, including 2 House members who represented portions of District 11, or the district I get to represent, House Agriculture Committee Chairman Larry Combest and then Ranking Member Charlie Stenholm, worked hard to craft a crop insurance system that works for farmers and ranchers. That farm work is in place so policies may be fine-tuned in order to work for all of our producers. We do right in safeguarding this critical achievement. There's much in the Farm Bill that is worth protecting, and there are some critical mission areas that need improving. Beyond protecting crop insurance, I would submit that at a time when there is so much uncertainty for farmers and ranchers, including on the trade front, that this Conference Committee should do absolutely nothing, I say nothing, in regard to trade promotion and food aid programs that would inflict harm on our farmers and ranchers. In regard to areas needing improvement, perhaps nobody knows better than my ranking member just how badly we need a well-funded animal disease preparedness and response program. Mr. Peterson's state suffered significantly due to avian influenza, and we need to prevent additional outbreaks in the future. We put strong funding in the Farm Bill, in the House Farm Bill, and Mr. Peterson's motion to instruct, which was overwhelmingly approved in the House, urges us to go further. Another area that must be safeguarded and improved is the commodity title. The commodity title provides the safety net that is so desperately needed right now for our farmers and ranchers. After all, helping struggling farmers and ranchers weather the current storm is the driving force behind getting this Farm Bill done and done on time. We need to be putting more resources into the farm safety net, not less. There are certainly areas of disagreement between the two chambers, disagreements that stretch far beyond the nutrition title and are plainly reflected in our respective versions of the Farm Bill. But the good news is that I've seen no disagreement that should prevent us from completing a strong Farm Bill and completing it on time. Even on SNAP, I have repeatedly stressed that we are willing and able to come to consensus with the Senate. Finally, I want to conclude my remarks by extending my gratitude to Secretary Perdue and his team. They've been great help throughout this process, and we're very fortunate to have the right man at the right place at the right time. I also want to thank committee staff, both Democrat and Republican in the House and the Senate, for all of their hard work behind the scenes to get us to this point over the past year. You've given up weekends, holidays, and time with your families. So thank you for all the work you've done, and we will race to the finish with the Farm Bill. With that, Mr. Chairman, is it President Trump calling? Sorry about that, I'm going to turn that off. With that, Mr. Chairman, I pledge to you and all of my colleagues, and above all to farm and ranch country and rural America, that I am ready and willing to remain in Washington and work every day until we get this Farm Bill enacted into law. At the start of this year, very few thought we'd get this far. We've come too far not to get this job done on time, and let's work together to make that happen. Mr. Chairman, I also asked that with respect to House conferees that we use proxies during the conference process. Without objection? So ordered. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Let me observe that when I was in the House of Representatives, I used to refer to the Senate as the Cave of the Winds. I think you can all tell because of the Kennedy caucus room that it is extremely difficult to hear members speak, so I encourage you to speak as best you can so that we can hear you.
Pat, I don't think your mic is on.
So, of course, that depends on the member. Senator Stabenow.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's wonderful to be here with our House and Senate colleagues on this very, very important task. Today's conference committee meeting shows that through hard work and perseverance, bipartisanship is still possible, and it's really important that we be able to get this job done together. Thanks to your leadership, Chairman Roberts, the Senate delivered a strong farm bill that maintains the bipartisan Food, Farm, and Conservation Coalition. I was proud to be your partner in that effort. In addition to having the support of over 500 groups, it passed on a historic vote of 86 to 11, and the chairman reminded us that 2 people were absent. It was actually 88, so if everyone had been there. The most votes a farm bill has ever received in the Senate since the very first bill in 1933 during the depths of the Great Depression. While we're not in the 30s, times are tough for our agricultural economy. Commodity prices are low. Trade disruptions are creating uncertainty, and many farmers are struggling. When I'm home in Michigan, where agriculture supports 1 out of 4 jobs, I hear from our farmers and agricultural businesses that now, more than ever, they need the certainty of a 5-year farm bill. We can give them that certainty, the certainty they need if we work together. Chairman Roberts and I worked side by side on every part of our bill, from the commodity and conservation titles to the nutrition title, and everything in between. I know that feeding people in need and helping them find good-paying jobs doesn't have to be a partisan issue. In fact, it shouldn't be. We have 2 basic safety nets in the Farm Bill, as we know, one for farmers and one for families. We know that the costs of the farmer's safety net are going up because of drops in commodity prices, many challenges, massive uncertainty of trade, serious labor challenges. The good news is that the safety net for families, or SNAP, is working and costs are going down. The Congressional Budget Office has said food assistance programs are saving $80 billion more than initially expected because of the economy is getting better and unemployment is going down. Therefore, massive eligibility changes that would take away SNAP benefits for 2 million people and subject millions of moms with young children, seniors, and others to unnecessary paperwork burdens makes no sense to me. And importantly, these cuts do not have the support of the Senate and do not even have a strong consensus in the House. Instead, in the Senate, we focused on bipartisan provisions to improve the integrity of nutrition assistance by tightening oversight of state administration of SNAP. The good news is nutrition programs currently have strong work requirements. We maintained and strengthened them in the Senate bill by creating new job training opportunities to help participants find good-paying jobs so they no longer need temporary help. Nutrition is only one of the differences between our bills, however, in areas where we have to come together and make tough decisions. The Senate bill also supports the wide variety of farms across America. We have differences in our commodity title and in conservation as well, and other areas, energy, other areas, when we need to come together and work together and find common ground. In the commodity area, our country doesn't just produce a handful of crops, from corn and soybeans to specialty crops and organics. The strength of our agriculture economy is rooted in the diversity of what we grow in our country. We need to invest in the future of agriculture by providing permanent investments for a number of important priorities. Helping young people and returning veterans start successful agricultural careers supports the next generation of farmers, and this is so important. Including historic support for organic research helps farmers tap into this fast-growing sector of our agricultural economy. Making new investments in both trade promotion and local food systems allow our farmers to sell their products here at home and abroad. Additionally, we can all agree that our farmers should have robust risk management tools, including strong crop insurance assistance and new tools for our dairy farmers who've been struggling. We should also establish meaningful payment limits, as the Senate did, to ensure taxpayer dollars are spent wisely and that farmers who need the support and help are receiving the commodity program payments. Also, conservation tools help our farmers keep their farmland productive while also protecting our land and water. I do not believe these critical programs should be targeted for cuts. Instead, we should look for opportunities to grow investments. We did that in the Senate bill by focusing on successful conservation partnerships that will leverage an additional $1 billion in private funding on the ground. We also cannot go backwards on fundamental protections of our water, our forests, and our wildlife. If we are serious about providing the certainty our farmers and families deserve, and I believe that we are, and getting the Farm Bill done, it's important that we do what the chairman said, do what needs to be done, as Chairman Roberts said, for our farmers and ranchers, and avoid poison pill riders that will stop us from achieving our most important goal of providing certainty. We need to create and focus on ways to create jobs in rural communities by making investments in clean energy and bio-based manufacturing. These investments, along with expanded high-speed internet, which I know we all understand to be so critical, opioid treatment resources, which we've come together on in a bipartisan way, rural water infrastructure investments, and the restoration of the Undersecretary for Rural Development are all common sense provisions that should be included in the final bill. We know there are important differences between our two bills. We also know that we can come together and find common ground and get this done. One thing we all agree on is the urgent need to pass a 5-year farm bill. I believe if we work together, our conference committee can carry on the tradition of passing a bipartisan farm bill, and that we can get it done by September 30th. I look forward, Mr. Chairman, to working with you and members of the House and the Senate to do just that. Thank you.
I thank the Senator. I thank the senator. It's now my privilege to recognize the former chairman and current ranking member of the House Agriculture Committee, Congressman Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just have to say that it might have been helpful if you would have supplied us with binoculars. But I am going to take your advice and be brief. So thank you, Chairman Roberts, Chairman Conaway, and Ranking Member Stabenow for the cooperative work that you and your staffs have done to this point. And I would echo Chairman Conaway's comments that the staff has gone out above and beyond to try to work this out. We have one goal, and that is to get this farm bill done. Farmers are counting on it, and we've all seen the statistics on the decline of the farm economy, also on the struggles that we're having with trade, the news of the volatile weather, and the range of other challenges that farmers face. It makes no sense, and it doesn't benefit those farmers one bit, to relitigate how we got here. It doesn't get us any closer to our goal. We're all here for the same reason, to deliver for the people who count on the programs within this bill. Those are farmers, they're consumers, they're people who care about renewable energy and research and natural resources and rural communities. This bill tackles all of it, and I'm eager to hear your ideas as we move along with this process. But more than any one issue, I want a farm bill. And I'm here to work to get a conference report that we can all sign, pass through our respective chambers, and send to the President to be signed into law. I'll remind our conferees that and that should be our goal, and their goal as well, and that nobody in this room is going to get everything that they want, and that this process is about compromise. So with that, I yield the balance of my time and suggest that we get to work.
I thank the Congressman. It is my privilege and honor now to recognize the Republican leader in the Senate of the United States, the senator from Kentucky, Senator McConnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to be here this morning and join all of you as the majority leaders. You can imagine I can't remember the last time I appointed myself to a conference. But I wanted to contribute personally and to underscore what I think we all agree on a bipartisan basis. Failure is not an option. We need to get a farm bill signed into law before the end of September. So I'm proud to be here to speak for Kentucky farmers and rural communities. I can assure you they've been following our progress on this bill very, very closely. I look forward to working with each of you to deliver a farm bill that works for them, for farm families and rural communities across our country. Just last week, we learned that USDA is now forecasting that net farm income will decline by 13% this year, as others have pointed out. That's a continuation of 5 years of depressed commodity prices. It's never been easy to make a living as a farmer, but these new data only confirm what I know all of us regularly hear from the farmers and ranchers we represent. They're faced with falling prices, volatile markets, and the threat of natural disaster. What they need more than anything else is predictability. They need stability. And some, they need our help. This bill is our chance to provide it. I'm proud that the Senate, as several of our colleagues have pointed out, passed our version, 86-11. I hope we'll continue in good faith cooperation and send a bipartisan, bicameral bill to the President's desk that he'll sign before the end of September. If not, it's going to be a bipartisan failure of extraordinary notice to the farmers and ranchers of our country. This legislation will fulfill our core responsibilities to our American farmers. It will also make new investments in rural communities, such as expanding broadband access, provided ongoing support in the fight against opioid abuse and substance addiction, and it will empower producers to fully explore growing markets both here and at home and around the world. Now, it's no secret I'm particularly excited about the parts of the Senate-passed bill that concern industrial hemp, and I want to recognize my friend and colleague, Congressman Comer from Western Kentucky, who, as Commissioner of Agriculture before he came to Congress, was the first Kentuckian to take a major lead role in what has now developed into a national consensus, I believe, that industrial hemp deserves a comeback. I think the confusion with its more controversial cousin has largely been eliminated, and I particularly want to give him a shout out, not only now here to finish the job as a member of this conference, but for really starting this issue in our state. Consumers, as we all know, have been consuming hemp products for decades. It's everywhere. It's just coming from some other country. It's past time that we build on the work we began with the pilot program in the 2014 Farm Bill and unleash farmers in Kentucky and any other state you represent that wants to take a shot at it. With proper oversight, they can capitalize on this multi-billion-dollar market. So there's a lot to be excited about in this legislation. I hope our comprees will keep our eyes on the prize, focus on what we're able to accomplish together, and resolve our differences quickly. Let me underscore the quickly part. We all know how challenging September can sometimes be. We're working hard to finish 9 of the 12 appropriation bills and put them on the President's desk. That hadn't happened, I believe, before the end of September since 1997. We've had good bipartisan cooperation on that project here in the Senate, but none of that will alone be enough. We need to produce this bill, work out our differences, reach a consensus, pass it, and get it on the President's desk. So I want to thank all of you for your contribution, and I look forward to these differences being worked out rapidly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Leader. Congressman Thompson.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Roberts, Ranking Member Stabenow, Chairman Conaway, Ranking Member Peterson. Thank you for your service on the Senate and House Agriculture Committees and all the work you've done to get us to this point. Rural America continues to experience hard times, which is why now is the time to come together and produce a final farm bill before the current bill expires. H.R. 2 does much for commodities across the board, but I'd like to mention my strong support for the dairy provisions in the bill. Dairy producers in particular continue to struggle, and I'm pleased that both the House and the Senate Farm Bills build on assistance provided earlier this year. Among the reforms, both bills improve the margin-based program and the opportunity for producers to participate in both livestock-based insurance policies and dairy commodity programs. I strongly support the conservation title contained in H.R. 2, especially the funding structure for EQIP, RCPP, and ACP. It's critical that we continue to provide these important dollars for conservation purposes, targeting them directly towards farmers, ranchers, and landowners. H.R. 2 also builds on the current Farm Bill by streamlining processes and making programs easier to navigate. This includes merging CSP into EQIP, which I believe will help make EQIP and its administration simpler and more effective. The House version also does much for our forest lands and contains numerous provisions designed to provide the Forest Service with more latitude to better manage. Specifically, I strongly support the bill's categorical exclusions for critical response, salvage operations, and hazardous tree removal. By providing the Forest Service these expanded authorities, we can better manage and encourage healthier forests and ultimately prevent costly and often deadly wildfires. As Chairman of the House Nutrition Subcommittee, I appreciate Chairman Conaway's leadership to reform and modernize SNAP. Without question, SNAP remains incredibly important for many Americans, yet real and ultimate food security only comes from a family-sustaining job. Our goal is always to ensure that those truly in need will have access to quality food through SNAP. However, while we write a farm bill that meets that objective, we also have a tremendous opportunity to provide SNAP beneficiaries the tools and skills needed to thrive in a booming economy. We currently have an unemployment rate at 4%, soaring business confidence, and over 6 million jobs available. Now let's provide this work-capable population new opportunities by enforcing the expectation of work, the power of work, while modernizing the supports to find employment. Despite the rhetoric from some, the states already have this job training framework in place, and H.R. 2 would work in combination with existing programs such as the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. This past July, legislation I introduced, the Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act, was signed into law by the President, and that legislation reauthorized the Perkins Act, which funds career and technical education, directly helping Americans to gain the skills and qualifications to fill these kinds of jobs. An expectation of work, when paired with funding, service, and supports, just makes sense. SNAP is more than a feeding program. It is a support program. It has evolved from just a feeding program during the Great Depression to include work supports, nutrition education, incentive programs, and more. It's time to evolve further so we can serve Americans in the most impactful way, and that includes a strong work requirement that is paired with meaningful job training opportunities. Again, I thank my colleagues for all of your work on this Farm Bill, and I look forward to getting a final conference report to the President's desk.
We thank the gentleman. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Senator Roberts and Senator Stabenow, for your leadership in passing the Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018 with 86 votes, as the ranking member and the chairman pointed out, the most votes ever received on the Senate floor. The Senate bill provides needed certainty to Ohio farmers and ranchers all over the country. It makes important changes to the conservation title to help clean up Lake Erie and the Ohio River. It provides permanent funding for local food programs that ensure small, innovative farming operations can grow their businesses. It's a farm bill, it's a food bill, it's a jobs and economic development bill, it's a research bill, it's a rural broadband bill, it's a bill that affects every one of our constituents. That's why it's so troubling that the House passed an entirely partisan bill that cannot earn the votes to pass both bodies. A bill that hurts hungry families and a bill that creates a massive new bureaucracy tied to nutrition programs, while at the same time making it easier for Wall Street investors and those who don't do a day of work on the farm to receive USDA handouts. We need to get the Farm Bill done this year, as Leader McConnell said. We need to provide farmers with the certainty they deserve, a certainty that seems almost elusive in farm country today. We need a bill that's designed with input from farmers across the country who will be affected. As I did during the 08 and 14 farm bills, my office and I held roundtables across Ohio where I asked farmers to tell me what this year's farm bill should look like, what was working for them, what needed to be fixed. These farmers told me that the ARC program worked the way we intended. It provided the needed safety net as prices have dropped. We made tweaks to ARC in the Senate bill. We did not go far enough to ensure that Title I programs work for Midwestern crops. Senator Thune and I introduced legislation to make ARC and PLC even more market-oriented, but too many in this body believe that farmers of some crops are entitled to a USDA payment even when prices are above 10-year highs. I urge my colleagues to ensure that the commodity title provides a real choice for farmers between ARC and PLC. The Senate bill also consolidates and streamlines local food programs and the local ag marketing program that will, for the first time, provide baseline funding for local food promotion programs in the value-added producer grant program. Our conference report must include LAMP with permanent baseline funding that this growing sector needs and help farmers increase their sales and reinvest in their local communities. Promoting soil health and reducing runoff, protecting water quality is one of the most important issues in Ohio right now. Harmful algae blooms are a threat to jobs, to clean drinking water, and to public health. That's why it's unbelievable that the House-passed bill proposes to cut conservation funding by $1 billion. My office hasn't heard from a single farmer who thinks now's the time for Congress to cut conservation funding. The Senate takes an aggressive approach to demanding more from our conservation programs, and these reforms must be included in the conference report. Let's maintain or increase funding levels, include the CRP reforms introduced by Senators Ernst and Grassley and me that target sensitive acres, make CSP more usable in our working lands, and allow states to increase their match for the best EQIP practices in their state. I've always been proud to be on the Ag Committee. It's, of any of the committees in Congress, it's the least partisan. This bill, the Farm Bill, works for those we serve, farmers, families, and communities. The Senate bill and Senate action shows how we can do that again this year. We need our House partners to come to the table and work with us. It's the only way we get this done, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
We thank you, Senator. Congressman David Scott.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We are here at a very historic time. As we grapple with our farm bill, we're also faced with a devastating, in many ways, trade situation. We have our farmers with the highest suicide rate. And it's very important that we understand what has happened over the past week for our nation with the passing of our great friend John McCain, Senator John McCain. We all saw and heard the great cry in this nation for bipartisanship. Well, ladies and gentlemen, contained in this bill is a glorious example of bipartisanship, of Democrats and Republicans working together. And as you know, Ms. Stabenow, and thank you for mentioning the fact of our beginning farmers and the need to understand that we must respond to this national crisis. The average age of our farmers now are 60 years of age. They're faced with many obstacles, and we've got to do more to bring the newer generation into farming, into agriculture, into food production. And so, with the help of many of my friends on both sides of the aisle, we have contained in this farm bill a pioneering, historic effort to bring $95 million to the land grant 1890 African American colleges and universities. And I want to thank my colleague for stepping up to the plate. Thank you so much, Kevin Kramer from North Dakota, for your work as my lead Republican co-sponsor. I also want to thank Senator David Perdue, my Senate Republican co-sponsor, who's joined with myself and Representative Fudge and Ms. Adams and Cleaver and so many of us in making sure that we get this measure passed. I appreciate now that the language is in there, which says this, that for each of the 5 years, every one of the 5 years, these 1890 African American colleges and universities will receive $1 million for each of the years for 5 years. That means 5 times 19 colleges, $95 million. And I just know that when the American people see that this could not happen without Democrats and Republicans working together. And I want to thank you, Chairman Roberts, and I want to thank you, Ranking Member Peterson, and the leadership of this House and Senate. And let's make sure that nothing happens during this discussion, during this Farm Bill negotiations, that in any way would jeopardize the $95 million. We're almost to the finish line, and when we get there, because the colleges and universities, these African American schools, and may I say, Mr. Chairman, for those that may not know, while these are traditional African American colleges and universities, everybody, white, black, Hispanic, the whole nation, regardless of race, creed, or color, will be going to these schools. And this is the way we help farmers, to give them this powerful shot in the arm, to let them know that we're preparing the next generation. And I can say, and I think we all can say, that that spirit of John McCain is resting with this wonderful collaboration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We thank you, David. Senator Bozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's great to be here with so many friends and colleagues to get a farm bill passed. Several months ago, many folks doubted that we would actually be here finalizing the 2018 farm bill. But here we are working in regular order in a bipartisan fashion to provide certainty and predictability for our farmers, ranchers, and rural Americans. With net farm income half of what it was 5 years ago, farmers and ranchers are experiencing the most fragile farm economy since the 1980s. In both chambers, we've crafted policies not to make the good times better, but to make the tough times bearable. But we are not without our differences. I'm deeply concerned that the actively engaged eligibility provisions included in the Senate bill will only exacerbate the pain being felt throughout rural America by arbitrarily excluding some farmers from Title I programs. This is often characterized as a regional difference, but let me be clear, this provision does not discriminate against regions, it discriminates against farmers and those who feed and clothe this nation. It will hurt family farms across the country and in each one of your states and districts. Actively engaged requirements have been around since 1987, and in the 2014 Farm Bill, Congress included provisions that further tighten program eligibility. We have not yet seen the full effects from that. I have concerns that this is a policy that no farmer has asked for, that is not being publicly debated, nor thoroughly vetted. I think that the House did a much better job in this regard. Throughout this bill, there are several areas where we have opportunity to truly make a difference. We have the opportunity to pass common sense, bipartisan provisions to provide meaningful regulatory relief to folks like agriculture aviators. We must pass a robust forestry title that gives our rural communities the tools to actively manage our timberlands. We must ensure that our nutrition programs are serving the most vulnerable while also maintaining program integrity and support for the general public. Both bills work to advance voluntary incentive-based conservation. As we resolve differences between the bills, we must ensure that both our livestock and our row crop producers maintain access to robust and flexible working land programs like Nfip, as well as retain increased funding and the positive policy changes for programs like WRE, which is important to waterfowl in Arkansas. A few weeks ago, I traveled across Arkansas and heard firsthand from farmers. For Arkansans, the message was clear. Pass a meaningful farm bill. We must do right by our farmers, ranchers, foresters, rural Americans, taxpayers, tribes, retailers, and consumers, and hammer out the remaining differences to send a workable farm bill to the President's desk. And I certainly look forward to working with you to achieve this goal. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. I now recognize the former chairman of the sometimes all-powerful House Agriculture Committee, Congressman Goodlatte.
Well, thank you, Chairman Roberts, and thank you, Chairman Conaway, and thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning. I'm excited to formally kick off conference process for the 2018 Farm Bill. And after years of field hearings, deliberations, and hard work by both committees, I trust the final product we create will be one that helps revive our farm economy while also aiding those who participate in SNAP to better stand on their own feet. While many different issues will be addressed by everyone sitting here today, I'd like specifically to highlight the success of consolidating our conservation programs. In the 2008 Farm Bill process, when I was ranking member on the committee, I was one of the first to champion the consolidation of our conservation programs. In the 2014 bill, 23 programs were consolidated into 13, and the result was a conservation title that is widely supported and continues to deliver across this great country. In the 2018 House bill, a signature provision is the merging of the more efficient aspects of the Conservation Stewardship Program, CSP, into the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, EQIP. Building on the great work of the last Farm Bill, this approach is flexible and scalable over multiple years and over an entire agricultural operation, while providing greater flexibility to modify and adjust the stewardship contract due to environmental, financial, and technological changes during the contract term. This results in a comprehensive national program that can reach across the United States and provide opportunity in every segment of agriculture. I, too, would also like to give a shout-out to to Congressman Comer for his outstanding work in bringing back into the agriculture sector a very important crop, hemp, that, as the majority leader in the Senate noted, is clearly distinguishable from its cousin and should be something that this farm bill takes the opportunity to bring to full force and allow American farmers to offer the base crop that can be converted into thousands of consumer products. It's been an honor to work once again on the legislation that has the most significant day-to-day impact on those in American agriculture. As this conference committee continues to deliberate, I remind all members who sit here today of the urgency to pass a bill before our current farm bill expires the end of this month. That is what we owe those in production agriculture whose livelihood is so intimately impacted by what is in this bill. Thank you again. I look forward to engaging this committee on policies that help those in American agriculture. I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman. Senator Highcamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all of our colleagues in the House for coming over here and starting this very important discussion. We haven't really talked about the elephant in the room, which is that we have a growing and emerging crisis in farm country. Like a lot of you, I have sat across the table from farm families who don't know how they're going to pay the operating loan, who don't know how they're going to make ends meet. And now they're concerned, not just for themselves, but they're concerned about the next generation. Because during those good years, when farm income was double what it is right now, they encouraged their kids to come home. They encouraged their kids to farm and be agricultural producers. And today they're wondering why they did it, because they aren't sure that they're going to be farming next year. Now, that's a combination of a lot of things. In some states, like the chairman's, bad drought. In our state last year, bad drought, bad weather. But it's never the product of bad farming. It's never the product of bad farming. And now we have trade policies that challenge their soul and challenge their understanding of why it is that they're on the back end of a policy that could dramatically affect their livelihood. So why do I talk about this? I talk about this because it sets the urgency of compromise. We all come with our ideas. We all come with the notion of what we're going to do moving forward. But we have to, on this conference committee, understand that compromise has to be the major obligation that we have, because if anything, our farmers need the certainty of a farm bill. They need to know that this body can deliver certainty and a farm bill on time. That will grow optimism. That will grow their opportunity to continue to produce. And literally, it will give them something to take to the bank. To take to the bank. Because if they don't have a farm bill that provides certainty, that banker's going to look twice at that operating loan and that extension. So let's not pretend that we're not in a bad spot right now in agriculture. We hear all about this great economy. Guess where it isn't? It isn't in farm country. 90% of all the land in North Dakota is in production agriculture. It is well over, I think, 30% of our new wealth creation. And if we do not get this right, we will have jeopardized family farmers for generations to come. And so, critically important, I think, that we approach this with the urgency that it is absolutely entitled to, given what's happening in the farm economy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Congressman Costa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and leadership of both committees and staff for their hard work. Like many of you, I spent the month of August throughout the district meeting with farmers and advocates. The people of California, San Joaquin Valley are hungry for solutions. And clearly we have many challenges, as has been noted, in farm country across our nation. The area I have the honor to represent is one of the most productive and diverse agricultural regions in the world, and yet we suffer from significant food insecurity. My family and I have been farming in the San Joaquin Valley for 3 generations. I'm here to work on a bipartisan, bicameral manner to make tough decisions and compromises, because the compromises will ultimately determine whether or not we find the solutions and create a strong farm bill that I think we all desire. The House and Senate have passed two different farm bills, and like all of you, I like some of the provisions in some of the measures better than others. California is the nation's leading producer of fresh fruits and vegetables, which are staples of a nutrient-dense and healthy meals. The equitable treatment of specialty crops in the Farm Bill is very important to our nation. I support fully funding the Specialty Crop Research Initiative and to provide separate funding to combat citrus greening. Baseline funding for organic research and funding for organic certification cost share will also help. Additionally, it's imperative that we expand foreign markets for U.S. products. 44% of California's agricultural production is dependent on foreign trade. Certainly, a trade war would be detrimental to all of the United States' agricultural productivity. That's why the language in the Senate bill for the Technical Assistance Specialty Crop Program, I think, is important. Maintaining funding in the conservation title, increasing funding for the Environmental Quality Incentive Program, and maximizing the effectiveness of matching programs like regional conservation partnership programs should be a priority for this conference committee as well. This will help improve the sustainability and how farmers farm their land and confront the ever-increasing water demands they face. In California, we say where water flows, food grows. On the dairy side, the Senate bill increases catastrophic coverage levels to provide greater value to producers during difficult years. We know our dairy industry has suffered across the country. I hope we can retain this provision and even enhance it in our final report. I also support mandatory funding for the three-pronged approach to preventing animal disease control. And finally, we'll not be able to support a conference report that raises barriers to eligibility for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, otherwise known as SNAP. Removing people from SNAP to pay for unproven workforce training program, as in the House bill, I think is the wrong thing to do. Last week, I hosted a SNAP workshop partnership in my district with local food banks and anti-hunger advocates. Hunger is a real crisis in the San Joaquin Valley. It's a true paradox. I represent a region that has incredible food diversity in its production and puts food on America's dinner table every night. Yet we have significant hunger throughout our region. The House version of the bill would only make the situation worse, overwhelming food banks and abandoning the most vulnerable families, seniors, and veterans. And that's why I believe supporting the 10-state SNAP education and training pilot programs is important. We should consider expanding it. They will help us find solutions to pathways to work, as shown in California's pilot project at the Fresno Bridge Academy. We should expand these efforts and learn from them. Finally, Mr. Chairman, members of this conference committee, we can and we should produce a bipartisan farm bill for the good of American agriculture and our country. I yield back the balance of my time.
We thank you, Congressman. I am pleased to introduce the senior senator from North Dakota, Senator Hoeven.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to you and the ranking member, as well as the chairman and ranking member in the House for all your work on this bill. You know, good farm policy benefits every American every single day. You know, we talk about how we craft this legislation for our farmers and our ranchers, and we do, but every American benefits every single day from the highest quality, lowest cost food supply. So when we talk about getting this done, we're talking about getting it done for all Americans. And if we get it done before the end of September this year, which I certainly believe we can and need to do, I think that'll be the first time in about 20 years it's been done on time. And it's more important than ever that we get it done on time this year to give our producers some certainty, right? I mean, look at the challenges they face now with commodity prices and with trade issues and the other challenges they have. So let's give them some certainty with a good farm bill. And the reality is we're posed to get a very good farm bill. The House passed a good product, the Senate passed a good product. I think we actually can combine these two bills and get a better product. Now, I'll just mention a couple examples where I think, you know, we can put these two together and get an even better bill for our farmers and ranchers. We both start out recognizing that crop insurance is number one, right? So we maintain crop insurance. That's our number one risk management tool for our farmers. On the safety net, I think there's some aspects of PLC where the House did a better job. You create an opportunity for those reference prices to go up based on market conditions. I think that's better than the Senate version, but in the ARC program, I think we did some things that are better in terms of the payment rate. We both put more flexibility into ARC. We both improved ARC, right? So there's an example where we can actually work together and I think get a better ARC and PLC in a conference report than either bill. Sugar policy, very important, but again, we're together on that one. Ag research. I mean, look what ag research has done out. I mean, we're growing crops in places we couldn't grow them before. They're disease resistant and they're higher yield. So let's make sure we do all we can to fund ag research, particularly our university-based ag research. Conservation. Again, I think there's some provisions in the House bill that are stronger and that we need to include. And let's always remember as we go through that conservation title, yeah, we want good conservation, but at the end of the day, it's got to be farmer-friendly. That's the only way it's going to work anyway. We've got to make it farmer and rancher friendly on these provisions. But again, I think a combined bill can be stronger than either bill. I chair the Indian Affairs Committee. We've got some really good provisions in the Senate version for Native American farmers and ranchers. And I hope we can include those. And then capital. The average age of a farmer out there right now is about 60 years old. Now, Bozeman, I think that's pretty young. But for a lot of folks, you know, we're thinking 60's getting up there, and we got to get these younger farmers on the land. So we've got to do more with access to capital. Both bills provide increases in the FSA loan guarantee and the direct loan. Let's make sure that's there for our farmers and ranchers. And so I recognize my time's up here. I'm going to end on the same note I started. Remember, this is for all Americans because good farm policy benefits every single American every single day at the dinner table. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. You really didn't have to bring up the subject of age, but I appreciate you doing that. It is my pleasure to introduce another former chairman of the House Ag Committee and a friend and neighbor, Senator Lucas. Pardon me, Congressman Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it is a pleasure to be here. I will acknowledge when we were last together almost 5 years ago, I had the privilege of speaking first. Now I speak 14th, but that's the proper way of the world that we live in. Why do I care about farm bills? Why do they matter? Well, I represent that part of Oklahoma that was the Great Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. And in the 1930 census, we had 14,000 people in my home county. We'll be lucky in the 2020 census if we've made it back to 4,000. A dramatic depopulation in the 30s, 40s, and then the drought of the 1950s. Why was that the challenge? Well, in the House, we don't have authority to address Mother Nature and the weather to make it rain. That might be the other body. But setting the weather aside, bad policies in the teens and 20s led to the 30s. Not so great policy in the 60s and 70s led to the economic burn down of the 1980s. Our responsibility is not to follow in the footsteps of our predecessors. The chairman noted this is his 8th farm bill. I believe this is my 5th farm bill, starting as an apprentice to UN Chairman De La Garza not too many days ago. And I've tried to pay attention and learn from that. In quick sum, what are the issues that I believe we have to address in this farm bill? Well, it's the safety net to produce the food and fiber that makes sure that our consumers and our neighbors here at home and around the world have enough to eat, enough to wear. ARC and PLC were designed to be different programs. If you remember when we did the 2012 that became the 2013 that became the 2014 Farm Bill, wheat was $8 a bushel, corn was $7. The pundits in this town said there would never be another bad day in rural America. You don't need a farm bill. But we created a safety net knowing that there would be another bad day. Cash commodity prices are essentially half what they were when we last met. That adds to the importance of passing another farm bill. Again, ARC and PLC were designed for different purposes. That's why we had a choice. That's why producers could decide whether they thought prices would remain high forever. ARC was your route. Or if you thought perhaps someday we would have a price collapse as we have now, PLC was your route. But there was a difference. There was a difference. CRP, dramatic reduction in acres in the last farm bill. Why was that? Under the Budget Act of 1974, if we didn't move those numbers down to achieve the savings that the market decisions were going to drive, we wouldn't have had the resources for the safety net and the crop insurance programs. But now CRP needs to come back up. We need to send a signal to the commodity traders that we're not going to be at these production levels forever. Nutrition. No more issue controversial in my life than the nutrition section. I won't deny to you, I'm still waiting for the pilot projects that we set up in the last Farm Bill to yield their results, to have some basis to work from. But whatever we ultimately decide on nutrition, I would simply ask all my colleagues here, let's not make it more difficult for consumers who need the help to be able to buy their products. Let's make sure they have choices in where they can use those nutrition benefits. And let's give them as much flexibility in what they purchase. I don't want to have to stand behind some mother or some father who has to explain to their teenager or pre-teenager why they can't buy the same products everyone else is buying. I don't think that's fair. Again, my friends, it's wonderful to be with all of you. We have a responsibility to get our work done. I have faith that we will get our work done, but we'll have some of the most glorious, philosophical battles imaginable before we get to that point. But let's get to that point in a hurry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yield back.
Thank you, Congressman. Senator Ernst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank our chairs and our ranking members today for their leadership and for helping write, and of course, the end result will be to pass this Farm Bill. I also want to recognize and thank the many members of staff that have helped contribute to this success and help us get us here today. With the livelihood of farmers and ranchers largely dependent on factors out of their control, completion of this Farm Bill is a must-do and a must-pass, as has been stated already. A Farm Bill can't walk beans. A Farm Bill can't change the forecast, and a Farm Bill can't restore lost market access. But what it can do is provide our farmers with the tools to navigate this stretch of declining farm income, low commodity prices, and a very turbulent trade climate. Representing one of the most productive agricultural states, I am grateful for this opportunity and pleased that so many of the concerns voiced by Iowans have been heard. We have protected a strong safety net by maintaining a crop insurance program that will allow producers to stay competitive and be more innovative, and we have included provisions strengthening commodity programs. I'm also very proud of the attention that the Senate paid to our conservation title. The Senate bill does include a handful of my priority provisions that reduce CRP rental rates to help beginning farmers access farmland, because we would like to see that average age drop below 60. Thank you very much. And we're trying to ensure that the land being enrolled is environmentally sensitive. All this while investing in working land conservation programs such as CSP and Nfip. And I do urge my colleagues to support this approach that will benefit soil health, water quality, and rural economies. With livestock production generating over 10% of Iowa's total economic output, I cannot stress enough the importance of protecting our producers and improving our animal disease response and preparedness capabilities. We recognize the need, but we can do better by building on the framework established and fully fund the response program and foot and mouth vaccine bank. Folks also deserve a regulatory process that is fair, transparent, and of course, science-based. By improving FIFRA and eliminating duplicative NPDES permitting under the Clean Air Act, the House bill has delivered on common sense regulatory reform, and I thank you for doing that. I also want to express my support for preserving the Senate-passed language under the energy title. This language restores mandatory funding and contains key reforms to help spur innovation and commercialize bio-based products, advanced biofuels, and other biotechnology applications. These provisions create new value for renewable materials that benefit our nation's farmers and rural economies. So folks, we have a real opportunity within this bill to make sure that we are feeding hungry Americans, protecting our natural resources, connecting our country through broadband, putting farmers first, and supporting rural jobs and economic development. I look forward to working with my colleagues on this effort, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that we will get this done in a very timely fashion. Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Walz.
Thank you, Chairman and ranking members. I'm encouraged to see so many of my colleagues do understand that this is a business that there's a lot of variables out of our control. I associate myself with Senator Heidkamp's remarks that there's crisis in farm country, whether it's unforced errors on trade or whether it's what we saw in southern Minnesota last night. What used to be referred to as a 50 or 100-year rain event is now the third one this year. Those are things outside of control. So what we do here is critically important. It's critically important we get it done, but it's critically important that we get it right. There's not a week goes by where a dairy producer doesn't come up and tell me that their fourth-generation dairy is on the verge by next month being gone. They're not going to make it on 1,400 weight, and we all know it. So this is important. But it's also important that everything that we do in this farm bill is a reflection of our national values. And I'd like to thank the gentleman for Oklahoma for pointing that out. How we approach the nutrition title is a question of our moral character. I refuse to believe that this nation allows a single citizen to go to bed hungry in a land of plenty. And we can get that right in this farm bill without punitive nature or shaming of people who maybe need a little bit of a hand up. I also think this idea of conservation on the land, ensuring the protection and enhancement of working lands conservation is critical. It doesn't just benefit the program recipients, it benefits all of us. When farmers create new wildlife habitat, it increases animal and insect populations that control pests, pollinating plants. When farmers plant cover crops, it sequesters carbon and mitigates climate change. When farmers nurture healthy soil, it decreases the risk of flooding and droughts. Ultimately, we'll all pay the price for environmental degradation. We must ensure in this final bill that CSP is in there. Reject this House version of it that undermines a program that is hugely successful in making a difference. I appreciate the Senate taking up some of our Soil Stewardship Act. Again, Mr. Lucas has been a champion of this, has taught many of us what it means to have healthy soils and in the long run how we benefit from that. We also, and again, I want to thank Mr. Denham from California, an understanding that we've got 100 million acres of farmland that are going to change hands in the next 5 years. We got to keep beginning farmer and ranchers. We got to make access to capital and get folks on the land making a difference. That, coupled with a Vets to Farm Act that's also in there, will make sure that if folks want to produce on the land, they can. And then again, I associate myself with the senator from Iowa. The energy piece that's in this has not only made us more energy secure and our national security, it has created thousands of jobs in greater Minnesota and throughout the Midwest. It's created billions of dollars back into our economy with true American innovation off that land. So anything to undermine the REAP program, anything to undermine investments in renewable energy just simply doesn't make sense. So I'm looking forward to us reaching a compromise on this. I've done it. This is my third one being with many of you. Now more than ever, as you heard, we wrote the last farm bill in good times. That's a mistake. We write it now to understand. We'll get to see the moral fiber of this committee. We'll get to see our smart decision making as it moves forward, and we'll get to enhance that hard work that's out in middle America and give them that certainty in a time of great uncertainty. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
We thank you, Congressman. Representative Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to once again represent the state of Alabama here on this conference committee, and I'm honored to be working with each one of you to craft a long-term legislation to give our nation's producers the certainty they want and that they deserve. In 2013's conference committee meeting, I stated that Alabama was home to over 48,000 farms. Unfortunately, today, I have to report that that number is down to less than 44,000 farms. However, Alabama agriculture is still a massive and very important industry in my state, but as you can see from that number alone, it's a tough business. Alabama's farmers and producers deserve a strong, consistent, and on-time farm bill. I often tell people that agriculture is like football. You need to know the rules of the game before you start to play. The Farm Bill is that set of rules, and our producers deserve to know what those rules are before they embark on the next several years of this tough business. In Alabama's 3rd District, we care about protecting sensitive farmland while maintaining farmers' access to working lands. We care about citizens' access to well-rounded nutrition. We care about America's rural electric co-ops. We care about protecting family farms while ensuring all family members can work on them. And we care about strong research funding for our two land-grant universities, Tuskegee University and Auburn University. Like most of America, my constituents strongly support enforcement of work requirements for SNAP users. What better time to build up an American workforce with increased job force training than when America's economy is booming? I encourage all my colleagues to work in a timely manner to protect America's food and fiber. An on-time farm bill is one of the most important things we can do for the folks back home. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your time, and I yield back.
Representative Fudge.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I thank the ranking member Stabenow as well. I also want to recognize that my sorority sisters are here today. Members of Delta Sigma Theta, thank you for being here. My colleagues, I know that it will not be easy to reconcile the differences between the Senate and House versions of the Farm Bill. Yet that is exactly what the American people are counting on us to do. Farmers and families across America deserve certainty and stability. So let's work across party lines to produce a comprehensive farm bill that recognizes the undeniable link between feeding and farming. I'm concerned that the House bill attempts to deny the fact that farming and feeding are dependent on each other. According to CBO, the House bill cuts more than $17 billion from SNAP over the next 10 years. That means that 1.2 million adults will lose benefits due to unrealistic and unproven work schemes. And for the record, and contrary to what you might hear from some of my colleagues, most of the people on SNAP who can work do work. There would be 400,000 working families that will lose benefits, and 265,000 children risk losing eligibility for free and reduced price school meals as a result of the elimination of broad-based categorical eligibility. What did these children do to us? Just as we should not turn our backs on farmers seeking relief from a downturn in the farm economy, we must not turn our backs on hungry Americans. Feeding hungry Americans in the wealthiest nation in the world, the nation that is the light on the hill that lights the path for every other nation, would be a disgrace. It is the just and right thing to do to feed hungry people. As ranking member of the House Agriculture Subcommittee on Conservation and Forestry, I am committed to ensuring the next Farm Bill invests in conservation programs that our nation's farmers and communities need. Working lands conservation programs, including CSP and Equip, allow participants to improve soil health and water quality in places like the Great Lakes. While maintaining productive, profitable farmlands, I am relieved the Senate bill not only protects both programs, but makes critical policy improvements to increase access to and effectiveness of Equip and CSP. Lastly, support for socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers programs and for urban agricultural initiatives remains a priority. I want to thank Colin Peterson, our ranking member, for the work he and his staff have done on this, and I look forward to working toward a collaborative solution. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Chairman Roberts, Chairman Conaway, and Ranking Member Members Peterson and Stabenow. It's an honor to be with you here today. I'm confident that in working together, we'll come up with a comprehensive farm bill that benefits farmers, rural America, and all other Americans. To some, farming may seem like simply putting seed in the ground one day and harvesting a crop in the months to come, but it's not. Operating loans must be obtained, land must be rented, supply chains for equipment, seed, and other inputs for the crops must be filled. Without the certainty of a timely farm bill in place, it becomes very difficult to plan for the upcoming growing seasons. Our families across this country, specifically the ones who put food on the tables for Americans and the world, deserve a timely 5-year farm bill. There's some key issues I hope to see addressed in this farm bill. First, with regard to the safety net programs. I think it's important that we ensure that producers have options when choosing between these safety net programs. Farmers across the country have different needs and different risks associated with their operations. What's right in the North or in the West may not be right in the Southeast. This legislation should protect farmers from massive losses caused by natural disasters like the devastating freeze of 2017 for Georgia blueberry and peach producers, or other events that are outside of their control. Furthermore, one of my primary concerns is Senate language for the definition of actively engaged and how much it will hurt the families and the farmers in my district. We don't need to seek ways to harm those that are trying their best to maintain the family farm. With regard to SNAP and the nutritional assistance, I want you to know I firmly believe that we have enough money in this country to take care of people who can't work. I also believe that it is a critically important resource for families who are struggling. And I know it's long overdue for changes to the structure and culture of these programs. The legislation drafted in the House includes some common sense changes to the existing policy, which offers a true pathway off of the program. These changes should benefit the economy, the recipients, and working families in this country. Allowing recipients access to knowledge and skills necessary to maintain employment and earn their way off of the SNAP program is our goal. With regard to rural broadband, the digital divide caused by an inadequate or a lack of broadband services has hampered innovation and job growth. Rural communities are suffering from higher prices and lower speeds for broadband services, which is largely due to overbuilding infrastructure in some areas while neglecting others. While our economy continues to boom, many industries seek locations where there is robust broadband infrastructure. Overlooking the hardworking men and women in rural America and leaving them behind is not acceptable. It's crucial for rural economies, healthcare, and education programs that this Farm Bill include legislation to bridge that digital divide. In closing, we need a Farm Bill that addresses all of these challenges. This is our opportunity to provide the needed certainty and support to our farmers and provide common sense reforms that will support the President's agenda of achieving prosperity in all of our communities. Passing a strong Farm Bill on time is key to this goal. I look forward to negotiating a final package with my House and Senate colleagues that works for our farm families in rural America.
We thank you for your comments, Representative McGovern. Let me say it would be a paradox of enormous irony for any senator to remind the remaining members of the People's House that we need to keep moving in a timely manner. But as I note here, we have 34 members of the People's House in about 80 minutes. We voted 12:15 in the Senate. You all voted 1:30. So with that statement, I now recognize Congressman McGovern.
Well, Chairman Roberts and Ranking Member Stabenow, let me begin today by doing something I rarely do, and that is I want to praise my colleagues in the Senate. You passed a robust bipartisan farm bill that reflects the needs and priorities of families and farmers throughout the country. The Senate bill isn't perfect, but Senate Republicans work with Democrats on an honest, good faith effort to create good policy that helps people. Now let's contrast that with the farm bill that was jammed through the House of Representatives. From the anti-environment provisions that reduce access to clean water and undermine critical conservation assistance to farmers, to the shameful cuts to SNAP, which I believe betrays the values of the American people. For me, the whole process in the House was a very frustrating experience. The House Agriculture Committee held 23 hearings on SNAP in the 2.5 years leading up to the 2018 Farm Bill, and I attended every single one of them. Not a single one of our 90 witnesses suggested any of the controversial pro-hunger provisions included in the House bill. Not one of them suggested that we kick hundreds of thousands of kids off of free school meals. Not one suggested that we cut SNAP benefits by over $20 billion and reduce or eliminate benefits for nearly 2 million kids, veterans, working families, and vulnerable adults. Honest to God, with all the partisan bickering in our country, you would think reducing hunger might be something we all could agree on. But in the House of Representatives, it's controversial. So look, I get it. Beating up on poor people for some is easy. Maybe it plays well to a certain political base. but quite frankly, it's just plain wrong. And I hope my colleagues will join me in supporting the Senate version of this bill with regard to nutrition. Instead of shredding our safety net like the House version, it maintains support for essential anti-hunger programs that are helping my constituents and people all across this country make ends meet. Now, we have an opportunity here to lift people up. Let's do that instead of tearing them down. Let's work together for the sake of the American people and give them a farm bill they can be proud of, one that invests in our farmers and supports our fellow citizens who are hungry. Mr. Chairman, I believe that hunger is a political condition. We could end it if we made it a priority. What the House did is a rotten deal for poor people, and it would make hunger worse. I look forward to working with all of you to do the right thing. I yield back.
Representative Crawford.
Thank you, Chairman Roberts. Chairman Conaway, I appreciate the opportunity to serve on this Farm Bill Conference Committee. Let me start with words that you'll very seldom hear here in the Senate. Let me be brief. Ultimately, passage of the Farm Bill will ensure that the U.S. remains a food-secure nation, something that affects us all. You only have to look at nations that can't feed themselves, like Venezuela, to understand the importance of a strong Farm Bill. Food security is national security, and a nation that cannot feed itself is a nation at risk. Supporting those who provide our food and fiber is a national security imperative. I look forward to working with my colleagues to pass a farm bill on time that gives our farmers and ranchers the certainty they need to continue providing Americans and the world with a safe, abundant, and affordable food supply. And with that, I yield back.
Congressman Vela.
Thank you, Chairman Roberts, Senator Stabenow. I am grateful to have this opportunity to serve on this conference committee. I look forward to passing a farm bill that supports our nation's producers while keeping high quality and affordable food on the table for all Americans. The 2018 Farm Bill sets crucial policy that impacts the livelihoods of all Americans, including my constituents in South Texas, and the decisions we make will have a long-lasting effect. As a conference committee, we have the responsibility to protect the interests of American agriculture and to make policies that anticipate the ever-changing challenges facing the industry. This is why the establishment of the National Animal Disease Preparedness and Response Program and the National Animal Health Vaccine Bank are critical. They will help ranchers who are dealing with the ongoing cattle fever tick crisis and protect livestock from foot and mouth disease. We must maintain the citrus set-aside in the Specialty Crop Research Initiative to ensure the future of the citrus industry. The U.S. Sugar Program is fundamental to protect hard-working sugarcane growers throughout the United States, protecting American jobs and contributing $20 billion annually to our economy. Finally, we must reject harmful provisions to the SNAP program, which ensures that the most vulnerable in our communities do not go hungry. I look forward to working with my colleagues on this conference committee to produce a farm bill that reflects the critical role of agriculture and our American values. And with that, Chairman, I yield back.
We thank you. Congressperson Hartzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today we have a great opportunity to provide long-term certainty to rural America and ensure every person in the U.S. has access to the safest, most affordable food supply in the world. I'm looking forward to working through key differences in the House and the Senate bills to find the best possible policy solutions. The 2018 Farm Bill needs to provide that long-term certainty for American farmers by maintaining a strong safety net and crop insurance programs, full mandatory funding for the FMD vaccine bank, and common sense reforms to our conservation programs like rolling CSP authority into EQIP. This ensures conservation decisions are made closer to the ranchers and landowners working to improve their communities. Times have been tough in farm country, as has been said, so it is critical to get farm policy right and the Farm Bill reauthorized before expiration at the end of September. The #1 economic development need in my district is access to rural broadband. This Farm Bill needs to improve access and reliability to high-speed internet for every American. The House bill includes my amendment that sets minimum speeds in statute and expands access to rural utility services loan and loan guarantees. These are key steps moving forward. In addition, the House bill requires RUS to match the length of loans with the needs of the community to ensure taxpayers are funding systems that will not soon be outdated. I support these provisions and believe we need to do everything possible to ensure every American has access to high-speed internet. Finally, we cannot miss out on the opportunity to take a positive step forward to break the cycle of poverty. Able-bodied adults without young dependents should be empowered to access work through career training programs to not only help individuals live out their full potential, but also fill the 6.7 million open jobs in the United States. Missouri already has a model that links job training centers, community colleges, and university extensions to provide wraparound job training services to teach the hard and soft skills individuals need to sustain long-term employment. This model is working for individuals like Joe from Columbia, Missouri, who went from being an unemployed ex-con to a trained HVAC technician. We want everyone to see this kind of success and every state to participate. An investment in these flexible state programs is an investment in the future of our citizens, our economy, and our communities. We cannot let this opportunity pass us by. So I thank the chairman and the ranking members for their leadership and dedication to this process. I'm committed to finalizing a deal before the bill expires at the end of September, because we owe it to our farmers, we owe it to the American consumer, and we owe it to our rural communities to keep our country strong and our people fed. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Thank you, Vicki. Congressperson Grisham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This past month, I had the opportunity to meet with farmers and ranchers across New Mexico who rely on Farm Bill programs that support the hard work they do every single day. This conference committee is our opportunity to pass meaningful bipartisan legislation that will reauthorize and improve essential programs that both protect the nutrition security of the vulnerable Americans and serve farmers and ranchers for the next 5 years. Now, I've worked with many of you to expand rural broadband development, which spurs economic growth, creates jobs, boosts wages, improves health outcomes, helps our students learn, and increases crop yields. Expedite the review and approval of new and innovative conservation and water management technologies to help states like mine manage drought and water shortages. Strengthen tribal sovereignty and consultation by empowering tribes to carry out forest management projects that improve forest health and cut through bureaucratic red tape, and ensure that both acequias and Spanish land grants can apply for EQIP and CSP funding, which will help preserve our farmlands for generations to come. Rural America is facing new, difficult challenges, including extreme and persistent drought that is only getting worse, market uncertainty due to tariffs and trade wars, rising energy costs, lack of capital, and low commodity prices. Further, millions of families are still struggling to make ends meet. Roughly 461,000 New Mexicans, 25% of our population, are on SNAP, including thousands of veterans, children, and working families. 1 in 4 New Mexico children do not know where their next meal is coming from. Last year, SNAP helped keep 76,000 New Mexicans, including 36,000 children, out of poverty. These are extremely complex issues that are sometimes a matter of life or death for producers and vulnerable New Mexicans. That is why it is so important that we support SNAP, SNAP-Ed, FINI, TFAP, and other programs to ensure that everyone has access to nutrition. We must also find the balance between supporting farmers while protecting our environment and facilitate the export of domestically grown crops. Mr. Chairman, time is not on our side. We need to get this done. Failure to pass a bill will harm New Mexicans whose livelihoods rely on programs that won't be extended and support organic research, farmers markets, value-added agriculture, and socially disadvantaged and beginning farmers and ranchers. Our constituents are looking to us to provide them with certainty and security. We owe them nothing less. I urge my colleagues to come together to pass a bipartisan farm bill that is desperately needed by farmers, ranchers, and vulnerable Americans in every single one of our districts. I yield back.
Thank you. Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 4 years ago, I participated in my first conference committee as a freshman member of the House Ag Committee. And just as it wasn't an easy process then, it's not an easy process now. But We saw success and we saw bipartisanship back then. And now as a subcommittee chairman, I look at these two bills and I believe each have components I'd like to see retained in the final conference report. Each bill contains protections against fraudulent organic imports and animal welfare provisions, which I support. In the Senate bill, I greatly appreciate the investment in research, energy, and local food programs. In the House bill, I'm particularly invested in the provisions which offer regulatory relief to my farmers. These provisions include my bill to extend the authorization for pesticide registrations, language to reduce duplicative permit requirements, and language to clarify the role of state agencies in pesticide regulation. Additionally, I support the House Farm Bill's bipartisan language, which I helped author, that promotes better customer service at USDA. Due to faulty implementation by USDA, dozens of grain elevators, including one in my district, were told that their long-standing exceptions were being revoked. Fortunately, Congress has stopped further revocations through the appropriations process. But for those grain elevators already impacted, we should allow them the opportunity to reinstate their long-standing exceptions. This is about free markets. One major component that impacts 80% of the Farm Bill is the House's common sense approach to modernizing SNAP. Our country's economy is growing at its strongest pace in 4 years, and our unemployment rate is at an 18-year low. Even still, in my home state of Illinois, 67% of work-capable adults receiving SNAP are not working. This isn't because they don't want to work. It's because many have been discouraged by a recession that lasted too long, and many lack access to the education and training necessary to get a good-paying, skilled job. The House bill makes substantial investments in workforce training and will help individuals receiving SNAP find a job. When I speak to any business in my district, one of their biggest issues is always a lack of a skilled workforce. There are 6.6 million open jobs in this country, and small business optimism is the highest it's been in 35 years. If not now, Mr. Chairman, when? When do we make these critical investments in our workforce to fill these jobs and help end the cycle of poverty for millions of American families? This is a good policy that can't wait. 4 years ago, as I said earlier, we had our ups and downs, but in the end, we got a strong farm bill across the finish line. I truly believe we can do that again this year, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you to achieve this goal. And Mr. Chairman, I'd be remiss if I didn't wish my colleague and friend, Ann Custer, a happy birthday today. Yield back.
I think we'll forego the singing. But our hearts are with you. Congressperson Custer, happy birthday.
Thank you very much, Chairman Roberts, and I'm honored to be here today with my bipartisan colleagues from both houses of Congress and to represent our hardworking Granite State farmers and producers who are looking for this conference committee to cast aside partisan politics and produce a bipartisan farm bill that works for rural America. From our dairy farmers along the Connecticut River to our specialty crop producers in the southern tier and our hardworking foresters in the North Country, the Farm Bill represents an important opportunity to achieve bipartisan solutions and find common ground to strengthen American agriculture during a time of low commodity prices and uncertain trade policies. The Farm Bill is like Halley's Comet of Congress. It only comes around once every 5 years, and this underscores the absolute necessity to have Democrats and Republicans working together to achieve common ground. I remember fondly our first Farm Bill when we just arrived in the class of 2012, working together with our colleagues, and yet I was so disappointed that we did not take that approach in the House this year, because it jeopardizes the continuation of so many programs that are important in New Hampshire. Thankfully, we have the opportunity to take a different approach in this conference committee to protect these important programs. We can protect access to supplemental nutrition assistance for over 35,000 New Hampshire families that receive the modest benefit of $1.11 per person per meal per day, simply to put food on the table. We can support hardworking dairy farmers by strengthening their safety net so that they have a modern and responsive risk management program that insulates them against tight margins, especially in New England when you're a long way away and feed needs to be trucked in. We can strengthen the Northern Border Regional Commission by expanding eligible counties in New Hampshire and making modest reforms to allow this critical agency to continue investing resources into our rural communities. We can invest in USDA rural development to bolster economic prosperity in rural communities and deploy life-saving resources to help combat the opioid epidemic that is sweeping rural communities across our country. And we can expand opportunities for producers to transition to organic agriculture by better utilizing conservation programs offered through NRCS. But we can only achieve these measures if we put politics aside and work in a bipartisan manner to deliver a much-needed farm bill. The clock is ticking. We only have 10 legislative days to pass a new farm bill before the current farm bill expires on September 30th. I stand ready and willing to work with anybody in this room to craft a farm bill that provides long-term certainty for both Granite State farmers and eaters. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Representative Yo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm honored to join this conference. Negotiating this legislation and delivering certainty to our nation's farmers and ranchers is my top priority. I want to thank Chairman Conaway for his leadership throughout this entire process and look forward to working with Chairman Roberts, Ranking Members Peterson, and Stabenow. And thanks to all my constituents who came to our office to discuss policies. Your input has been invaluable. With this conference, we have an opportunity to find agreements that deliver the certainty our farmers, ranchers, and citizens need. Every member here understands the importance of passing a farm bill. In a time of low commodity prices and market uncertainty, we must deliver before September 30th. The Farm Bill provides the necessary risk mitigation tools for our nation's farmers and ranchers to continue to produce the highest quality and abundance at the lowest cost in the industrialized world. We each have important priorities, and I'm ready to consider my colleagues' needs while we work together and craft an acceptable product that delivers for our citizens. I offer strong support for the House-passed reforms to the nutrition title. With our strong economy, there are more jobs available than people to fill them. It is imperative that we take this opportunity to encourage work through legislation. The best tool to fight poverty is a job. It's as simple as that. I want to issue my strong support for the House position regarding citrus research. I also lend my strong support for the Equip and CSP merger and the House reforms to the entire conservation title. I'm concerned with the Senate language, which cuts the rural electric program. Florida could see as much as $100 million cut, and that is money that's going to come out of the people, pockets of the people I represent in rural Florida. We can do better than this. I've worked long and hard with Chairman Conaway and industry to ensure the FMD vaccination bank was included in the House bill, and will do the same during this conference. The changes made to the Research Facility Act are a huge priority to me and constituents. Many of them spend hundreds of hours a month conducting research, analyzing zoonotic diseases, and protecting our food supply. The changes made in the House version will create greater funding flexibility, and I urge the conference to adapt these measures. Mr. Chairman, I also urge the House pass repeal of the WOTUS rule be retained in the final product. This provision would assist farmers and ranchers not only in North Central Florida but across the country. Several items included in the House bill will provide certainty, transparency, uniformity, and most importantly, a scientific basis for regulations and pesticides when used on farms or in homes. I urge members to include the bipartisan FIFRA language in the final conference report. We must not hamper innovation when it comes to crop protection technology. Many of our farmers and ranchers back home share an unfortunate situation with mine. The lack of a base acre update has created a divide between the great people who produce our country's food and fiber, and I'm committed to working with each of you to find a solution to this issue. Lastly, I hope that this conference will accept language offered and the House pass ensuring a favorable regulatory environment for plant breeding innovation. Again, I'm honored to serve on the conference and look forward to working with each of you on the priorities, and yield back.
Representative O'Halloran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today at this conference, we must put partisanship aside and work together to get results. We must aid our farmers and ranchers, help strengthen our rural communities, feed families and veterans who have fallen on hard times, and recognize tribal sovereignty. For Arizona's agricultural producers, our farmers and ranchers, we must have a reliable and meaningful safety net. Producers across the country deserve certainty that will back them up in times of low crop prices, just as families and veterans should have a safety net that help them when they are struggling to meet ends meet. For Arizona's rural communities, we must help them build the broadband and other infrastructure they need to access markets, health care, and education. We must also protect rural development programs that help rural Americans grow or start their businesses. For Indian country, we must provide tribal self-determination and sovereignty in forestry, nutrition, and education. We must also ensure that tribes are heard at USDA by continued presence of the Office of Tribal Relations in the Office of the Secretary. For Arizona's forests, we must create a restoration economy that will grow jobs and provide value to rural communities while reducing the risk of catastrophic wildfires. For Arizona's future, we must promote conservation practices that allow our farmers and ranchers to conserve water in a way that is fair and equitable by ensuring there is necessary funding. This Farm Bill is a tremendous opportunity to do good for rural Arizona and rural America. My parents grew up in rural America on a farm. It was lost during the Depression. And I also was a product of growing up in an urban environment where there was a tremendous amount of poverty. My father became a janitor. I've seen it from both sides, and everyone is in need of help at certain times in their life. I urge my colleagues to work together and develop a conference report that benefits all of rural America. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Rouser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here and be part of this conference committee. I have the distinct pleasure of representing a large agriculture district in southeastern North Carolina, home to a tremendous amount of animal agriculture production. And of course, I think we all know that America's farmers and ranchers face a great deal of uncertainty. That has been the case since the beginning. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a farm bill that's been in place for years and years and years, and otherwise we wouldn't be working to reauthorize this and get the policy right every 5 years. The fact of the matter is, in North Carolina, agriculture is an $87 billion industry, the #1 industry in the state of North Carolina. It's incredibly important to have a policy that ensures food security for this country and the rest of the world. And of course, food security means national security as well. As chairman of the Livestock and Foreign Ag Subcommittee, I want to mention that we have the establishment in both versions of the bill of a National Animal Disease Preparedness and Response Program, and also a National Animal Health Vaccine Bank, particularly focused on foot and mouth disease. And so I'm real pleased that both versions of the bill contain provisions related to that, and look forward to working out those differences in a positive fashion during the course of the conference. I want to associate myself with a few comments that my colleague Representative Davis made with regard to the SNAP reforms. Really what the House bill does, in my view, is it provides a lighted pathway to opportunity. And with opportunity, it provides a lighted pathway to prosperity. That's what we're trying to achieve. Just look at the numbers, and it should suggest that there's a real problem. In the year 2000, unemployment was 3.8, 3.9%, same as it is today. 17 million people, as I recall, enrolled in SNAP. Today, 41 million people. 18 years later, 41 million people enrolled. That suggests there's a real issue there, and folks are trapped in the system, and we need to do everything we can to keep these work requirements, make sure that our folks have a good, strong, lighted pathway to opportunity and prosperity. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
From the big 1st District of Kansas, Representative Marshall.
Kansas agriculture is in uncertain times. Multiple years of low prices and continued drought have taken their toll. Today, Kansas farm bankruptcies are 6 times what they were just 3 years ago. That's why I have no higher priority than a 5-year farm bill done on time. Farm country needs a multi-year bill that protects crop insurance, tightens the safety net, opens markets, and makes responsible investments in our communities. I'm pleased that both bills make serious efforts at improving Title I payments and the data used to calculate them, and I'm hopeful that the final bill will expand access to them. Agriculture is a risky endeavor. I see no need for the federal government to place more rules on who should be covered or how their business should be structured. I'm also glad to see that both bills include new provisions on animal health. When we consider the economic harm from an animal disease outbreak, it's crucial that Congress invest in monitoring, research, response training, and vaccines. The Senate proposed a study on livestock dealer defaults, which has caused millions in dollars in losses for small businesses and are more common than most realize. In 2015, a market in my district lost nearly $1 million when a dealer defaulted. I strongly support the proposed study. Today, we've heard a great deal about the financial challenges dairies face. I'm glad to see both bills make improvements to their programs. My hope is we can combine the best of each bill to benefit dairy farmers of all sizes. A great deal of success in American agriculture has been from the adoption of technology, which is a direct result of investments made in agricultural research. The USDA's research and funds provided to universities like my alma mater, Kansas State, help keep our products on the cutting edge. In conservation, keeping good land in production and focusing on working land programs is the right approach. CRP rates should be realigned while allowing a minimal increase in the acreage cap. Further, the House bill focuses on EQIP, which is straightforward to administer, favored by the vast majority of producers, and puts conservation money to work. As a physician, I've seen firsthand the impact that nutrition had on the mothers I delivered and the babies who we bore. That's why I'm proud of the nutrition provisions the House would put forward. When you have a program that has added 9 million participants since the height of the Great Recession, it's clear that something isn't working. The House approach provides a historic investment in job training. A new skill set or degree can be life-changing. We owe it to the people SNAP serves to be bold and improve these outcomes. To close, the 2018 Farm Bill touches a lot of people. My hope is today we realize we have far more in common in this bill than we have apart and can get a final bill done on time. Kansas and all of agriculture is counting on us.
Thank you, Congressman. Representative Arrington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honored to be here. I think this is as critical a time as ever to get a farm bill and get it on time, get it right, make sure the safety net is reliable and effective for our ag producers around the country. This is not just about the 10+ million jobs that ag creates. It's about national security. It's about ag. It's food and fiber independence, as I'm sure has been discussed. If you just look at the cuts to the Farm Bill safety net, billions of dollars over the years, if you look at the historically low commodity prices and the tariff subsidies and other trade inequities and on and on and on, these guys are living in really, really tough times, and we need to help them with certainty and stability by getting a good farm bill and a safety net that works. 50% decline in farm income over the last 3 years, 40% increase in bankruptcies. I mean, the young guys can't get in this business if we don't do this and do it right and do it quickly. And so the safety net to me is at the heart of it. We spend 0.26 of 1% of the entire federal budget to get a safety net right so that China won't put us out of the food and fiber making business. 0.26 of 1%. So I'm encouraged by what I've seen there on that side, but I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the AGI going from 900 to 700,000. It was at 2.5 million in 2002. And we've had a 50% decline in farm income. And so it's not the gross income that, it's the gross expense minus gross income. It's the net income that matters. And I think that's a threat. The AGI reduction, I think, is a threat to the safety net. I come from cotton country, largest cotton patch in the world. The EAAP, Economic Adjustment Assistance Program, that's support for textile manufacturing infrastructure. We don't have food and fiber independence if all we can do is grow the raw material. We've got to play it all the way to a final product. And China, again, is going to put us out of the fiber-making business. We used to spend 80% of the fiber grown here. Now China, 80% is sent to China for them to spend. So that program, $3 million a year, 3 cents on the pound, we can do that, but that is a threat, I think, to the safety net. We need, there's several things here. I'm not going to get through my time. I'm going to end on this food stamp reform because we've got an economy that's growing. We've got 7 million surplus jobs, and we've aided, abetted, in my opinion, by not tightening up the work requirements and enforcing them. We have millions of able-bodied adults in this country. We're not talking about the vulnerable. We're not talking about the elderly, the disabled, pregnant women. We're talking about able-bodied adults. And y'all have heard the statistics. We have millions, and we need to pull them up and out of the welfare trap and dependence on this government. And we need to give them the opportunity for a better quality life for them and their families. That's what that reform's about. I hope we can get that done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Representative Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank you, Chairman Conaway and Roberts and Ranking Members Peterson and Stabenow for giving me this opportunity. It's an honor for me to be here with you today and have the opportunity to represent the House Education and Workforce Committee on the Farm Bill Conference Committee. I was fortunate to grow up on a farm. My mom and dad also were educators. After playing an integral role in the House passage of H.R. 2 as a member of the House Agriculture Committee, I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues in both chambers to bring common sense solutions to the table. Agriculture is the #1 industry in Georgia. It's the #1 industry in the 12th District that I represent. And I continue to hear that Congress must take action to address the economic hardships that have devastated rural America and our farming communities. Our farmers need a strong safety net and certainty that a 5-year program provides. It is important that we support strong Title I provisions laid out by the House. Specifically, I would like to work with my colleagues to maintain the House definition for actively engaged in farming. Additionally, as a small businessman and job creator, the greatest privilege in my life was to give people the opportunity to have a good job, to have the dignity and respect they deserve, to give them the opportunity to provide for their family, their church, their communities, and yes, this nation, to give them the opportunity to be what God created them to be. I believe that, you know, if something's not working, you got to change it. You got to offer something that might work, and we hope that what we have done in the House will allow folks to do what I came to Congress to do, and that's to give every American the opportunity at the American dream. As a member of the House Education and Workforce Committee, it is important to note that the Farm Bill as passed by the House includes 2 child nutrition provisions that are essential to making our school meal programs more flexible, less expensive, and simpler to operate. It is essential that we reach our ultimate goal of sending a bold and effective farm bill to the President's desk for signature on time by the end of September. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Congressperson Adams, love the hat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you as well to our ranking members. I'm honored to join my colleagues today. As a member of the House Agriculture Committee, I've been disheartened by the partisan bill produced by the House. However, I'm hopeful that we can work toward a bipartisan solution that prioritizes the needs of American farmers and families. There are many strong provisions in the House and Senate bills, including Centers of Excellence for 1890s, which are our HBCUs. I'm a proud graduate and former professor. Urban agriculture research and extension grants, and improved local food programs which create opportunities in agriculture for a new generation. I'm confident that if these types of programs are included in our final farm bill, that we'll have a bill that we can all support. As an education and workforce conferee, I remind my colleagues about the farm bill's impact on workers and students. Research shows that students struggling with hunger have lower grades and are more likely to miss school. Because SNAP is tied to eligibility for other vital federal programs, the House's proposed cuts to SNAP would also cut access to free school meals for 265,000 children, preventing those students from reaching their full potential. The House bill also alters fresh fruit and vegetable programs to allow all forms of fruit and vegetables to be served in the program, even though a 2016 evaluation found that the addition of alternatives to fresh fruit produce results in a decrease in fresh fruit and vegetable consumption. Additionally, the House bill requires the Secretary to review nutrition standards pertaining to the National School Breakfast and Lunch programs. Both Congress and USDA have provided compliance flexibility, and the USDA also is finalizing a rule on additional flexibilities. So there's no pressing need to undo the current standards in their entirety. Lastly, the House bill requires the Secretary of Labor to revise OSHA's process safety management standard to exempt certain facilities from that standard by broadening the retail facility definition. This provision is unnecessary and should be removed. As a result of the 2016 court ruling, OSHA has already reinstated the earlier retail exemption and issued guidance stating that it will not enforce the process safety management rule in agriculture. Changes to the standard should be done through formal rulemaking as ordered by the court. I want to thank all of my colleagues for their participation today, and I look forward to a thoughtful deliberation and a bipartisan farm bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Shimkus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's great to be here with all my colleagues, some who I serve in the House with, and I've been here a long time. I represent Southern Illinois, 33 out of 102 counties. In south of I-80, in August, it's all ag all the time. I have corn and beans, more pigs than people, the largest dairy county in Illinois, and the largest wheat county in Illinois. So I spent all month talking about and hearing that this conference has to be done by the beginning of the fiscal year, just because of the uncertainty out here. So I would plead with the conferees to let's make that happen so that there's certainty as we go into the new fiscal year. And I know you've got a great record of doing that before, again. I'm just here because of the Title VI, the rural development portion, Mr. Chairman. And we all know about the digital divide and broadband deployment. We know that in the stimulus bill of 2009, we overbuilt areas that were served. So I come pleading to the conferees to say, let's do this. Let's fix the digital divide. Let's don't overbuild in areas, which means we have to have credible maps that identify served, underserved, and served. And we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to make sure that we have some accountability in this process. And that's why I would hope that we would also lean upon the administration folks, Chairman Pai with the FCC, Administrator Riedel from NTIA, because this is not new stuff to them. And so I think there's been progress on, I don't know how the negotiations have gone in this title, but we want, as members of the Energy and Commerce Committee and on the Telecom Subcommittee, we want to make sure that there's accountability in this process so that we get a good bang for the buck and it goes to those areas that really need it, not creating competitive markets where we have areas that many of you know from rural America that are unserved. With that, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for the time and I yield back.
Representative Tonko.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Excuse me. As a proud upstate New Yorker and a member of this House Energy and Commerce Committee, I am honored to work to produce a bipartisan product with the members of this conference committee. Growing up working on my grandparents' dairy farm, I developed a deep appreciation of agriculture's importance to New York. I have always been proud of our region's unique farming heritage, which not only serves as the backbone of our communities, supporting countless small businesses and providing our region with healthy, fresh, and locally sourced food, but importantly, is a way of life. Smart and small dairy farms have provided Americans with nutritious products for generations, but have faced distress in recent years. Our farmers are hurting. Our farmers feed America, and they deserve our respect. As this committee develops a final agreement, we must keep our farmers' viability in mind. As we work to provide America's farmers the stability and support they need to bring product to market, we must also ensure that our nation's most vulnerable are protected by maintaining a strong SNAP program. An estimated 2.5 million New Yorkers suffer from food insecurity, an issue that imperils the health and well-being of Americans in urban and rural communities alike. The SNAP work requirements in the House-passed legislation puts in place harsh rules and penalties which would apply to millions of SNAP participants, putting children, people with disabilities, and workers who cannot get enough hours to meet the proposed requirements at risk. Any final product must reject these proposals. We must also craft a farm bill which promotes sustainability. But unfortunately, the House-passed bill contains numerous provisions which pose serious public health risks and threaten critical environmental protections. The bill proposes cuts to conservation programs and undermines bedrock environmental laws. The House bill would facilitate the use of potentially harmful pesticides while weakening safeguards that protect farm workers and communities from exposure, and would carve out unwarranted exemptions for the highly toxic methyl bromide. Our conference report must strike provisions which put public health, workers, wildlife, and clean water at risk and promote responsible stewardship of our natural resources. We know many rural communities are often overlooked and underserved. We should use this opportunity to invest in rural America to foster new economic growth. The Farm Bill must support rural drinking water infrastructure and provide critical funding to protect source water. Farm Bill conservation funds can be essential to reducing runoff and preserving nearby communities' access to clean water. We must also support clean energy and energy efficiency expansion throughout rural America. The Senate's energy title supports funding for a number of innovative and popular programs, such as REAP, that deserve our consideration. And finally, the conference report should maintain its commitment to ensuring that all Americans can access broadband. The E&C Committee has worked to promote broadband deployment on a bipartisan basis. As we authorize additional funding, it is important that we ensure that federal programs are well coordinated and working together to steward these funds responsibly. I look forward to working to ensure that the Farm Bill prioritizes the well-being of all Americans. The final version must support family farms, and I again emphasize our dairy farms, protect SNAP beneficiaries, eliminate harmful environmental provisions, and promote economic opportunities in rural America through clean energy, clean water, and broadband deployment. With that, I thank you, Mr. Chair, and yield back.
Representative Kramer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank all four of our principal leaders and their outstanding staffs for the incredible work you've done in setting the table today for what I believe will be an efficient and productive process to provide that certainty we've all heard about today in a timely way, and that means by the end of this month. So thank you all. It's a special honor for me to be on this conference committee with my two senators, Senators Hoeven and Heitkamp, and I very much appreciate Senator Hoeven's optimism, and I share it. I start with that unifies us, the commitment in both the House and Senate bills of the highest priority of our farmers, and that is the maintenance of a good crop insurance program. I heard it at every town hall, every forum, and every conversation with a farmer. But of course, any insurance program is only as good as the data that it's based on. Unfortunately, for the pasture rangeland forage program, the rainfall data for western North Dakota was not adequate. The House Farm Bill includes report language that I introduced requiring the USDA to evaluate the coverage of NOAA weather stations in areas like North Dakota and consider alternative data collection methods to supplement their rainfall data. Nothing, of course, is more vital to our producers than access to capital. That is why I'm happy both the House and Senate versions increased guaranteed loan levels to $1.75 million for operating and ownership loans. I'm likewise optimistic about the House-Senate changes to the Agriculture Risk Coverage Program and PLC. One glowing mistake in the 2014 Farm Bill was allowing the United States Department of Agriculture so much authority over administering ARC. The Obama administration's prioritization of NASS surveys for determining yield data was unrealistic for my state and exacerbated by the administration's failure to correct it when shortcomings were so evident. Swamp Busters' inclusion in the 1985 Farm Bill redefined the bedrock cooperative relationship between producers and the National Resource Conservation Service in our state. This is evident by NRCS's failure to define minimal effects or a minimal wetland outside the owner's scope of Swamp Buster. When you leave too much discretion to the agency, our government rarely errs on behalf of the producer. Therefore, I've included legislation in the House version to direct USDA to accomplish their obligations. Additionally, repealing the WOTUS rule and any regulation revised under the rule is a priority for my producers. Another issue important for us to get right in the conservation title is the Senate's inclusion of $1.8 billion for the creation of permanent easement within the CRP. This is one of the most common concerns I hear from my constituents. It is my goal the Senate's cushion of credit provision in the Rural Utilities Service Electric Loan Program not be included in the final Farm Bill. Our rural electric cooperatives have nearly $219 million invested in the program and will be subject to detrimental impact of $50 million. North Coast telecommunication cooperatives will likewise be negatively impacted. The establishment of a new U.S.-only vaccine bank that we've heard from several today is a crucial investment in animal disease preparedness and response. And on behalf of single-ingredient sweetener producers such as honey and sugar, I ask the onerous and confusing proposed added sugars labeling be eliminated with the inclusion of the legislation that I have co-sponsored, the Natural Sugar Labeling Act. And I also want to associate myself with my friend Representative Scott, appreciate his commitment and share his commitment to enhancing our workforce by supporting our 1890 colleges. So thank you, Mr. Scott, for that. So let's get this job done on time and provide the certainty all of us need. I yield back.
Representative Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'm here to talk about the National Flood Insurance Program, the NFIP. There was an extension of this program to the end of the year, but as the conference committee would note that we did through the House and Senate, the President signed an extension to the end of November, which would make that provision obsolete. Both chambers and both parties are working on some of the reforms that we passed out of the House several months ago. So I would hope that that provision be removed as being unnecessary. Quickly, I come from America's dairyland, the great state of Wisconsin, where we have the happiest cows in America, or in North America. Also, we produce the best ginseng in Marathon County, Wisconsin. We have the largest production of cranberries in America in my district. But dairy, incredibly important to us, making sure that we have a risk management program in place that actually is beneficial to our farmers, that we're increasing coverage and we're allowing some of our smaller farmers to purchase that coverage at improved prices, I think is important. And I want to commend both chambers and both parties for improving the Nfip program that actually wasn't working for our farmers. Thank you for that. I want to quickly turn my attention now to the SNAP program, or the food stamp program. I'm interested in hearing some conference committee members talk about, in essence, the food stamps are going away, that we don't care about poor families in America. That's not the case. If you fall on hard times, we have a program that's going to help you. If we have kids that can't eat, we have a program that's going to feed them. All we're recognizing here is that in America, we have help wanted signs in every community, in every state. And we want to say, listen, if you're an able-bodied adult, so you're not a senior, you're not a kid, but you're an adult, you're not having a mental or physical disability, and you don't have little kids, you can't sit at home and watch SportsCenter. You either have to go to work, you have to go to school, or you have to volunteer. This just makes sense. And so for people to tweak that into saying we're not taking care of folks, not true. Men and women all across this country put their boots on every day and go to work, and they pay their taxes. They want to make sure that those taxes aren't going to folks who could go to work as well. They're willing to pay taxes to help people who fall in hard times, but not those who can go back to work. That's all we're trying to do here, is say, listen, if you can go to work, let's incentivize you to take one of those jobs in one of those small businesses or large businesses that have a help wanted sign in front of their door. So hopefully both chambers can work this out. I don't think we can be above compromise and working together, but I think this is a smart provision that we can find a unified approach on. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Congressperson Waters.
Thank you very much, Chairman Roberts and Ranking Member Stabenow, House Chair Conway, and Ranking Member Peterson. I'm pleased to have been chosen as a member of the Conference Committee for H.R. 2, the 2018 Farm Bill. Since the National Flood Insurance Program's multi-year authorization expired on September 30, 2017, ideological differences have led Congress to pass 7 short-term extensions and even allowed the program to briefly lapse twice during government shutdowns. More than 5 million families rely on the Nfip for affordable flood insurance. Communities rely on Nfip for flood maps and mitigation assistance, and small businesses rely on the Nfip to pick up the pieces when the inevitable storm hits. Yet the long-term stability of this critical program continues to fall victim to partisan politics. We are currently in peak hurricane season, and while I'm deeply disappointed that Congress continues to miss opportunities to stabilize flood insurance premiums, deal with the NFIP's debt, and invest in up-to-date and accurate flood maps, I urge protection of Section 12609, which would extend the NFIP through January 2019. Given the critical importance of NFIP to our housing market, we must take this small step to at least provide some level of certainty to businesses and families. Now, while I was chosen for this conference committee because of the inclusion of flood insurance in the Senate bill, there are a number of provisions of the House bill that I find deeply problematic. I'm especially concerned about the drastic cuts to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, is our nation's preeminent and anti-hunger program, and the House version cuts this critical program by more than $23 billion. This bill literally takes food from tables of millions of low-income families who are struggling to make ends meet. The House bill also cuts almost $800 million from sustainable farming practices by eliminating the Conservation Stewardship Program and includes several anti-environmental riders which weaken environmental protections, including pesticide regulations, the Clean Water Act, and the Endangered Species Act. Finally, I appreciate the fact that the Senate bill includes Section 12309, which provides robust funding for assistance to minority, veteran, and beginning farmers. This program will help to educate the next generation of farmers and ensure that farming is not limited to the wealthy and the well-connected. Thank you. I yield back.
Representative Royce.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just begin by thanking you and thanking our hosts here, thanking the other conferees for your efforts here to find common ground on the 2018 Farm Bill. As you know, I chair the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and I think this bill really comes at a moment of unprecedented need. And I say that because there are 65 million people around this globe that are displaced by conflict. We have not seen numbers like this since the Second World War in terms of 800 million people facing chronic hunger around the globe. And with this unprecedented need, there does come some opportunity in terms of some of the changes that we've made to better address the need. The opportunity to stretch our dollars farther to reach more people with life-saving assistance and reach them when and where they need it most, as well as the opportunity to open markets for U.S. agriculture. And the 2014 Farm Bill, the previous Farm Bill, included several modest reforms that have improved U.S. international food assistance. And those reforms provide limited authority for market-based assistance and reducing the harmful practice of monetization. Reforms, frankly, that are saving lives, reforms that are strengthening markets. I had hoped that the 2018 Farm Bill would build upon this progress by allowing for additional market-based assistance, but still, I have to say this, looking at the bill, I really appreciate that neither the House nor the Senate has rolled back those gains, those modest gains, but the gains we made in 2014. And I do commend the committees for agreeing to make monetization a tool of last resort. And I am pleased to see continued support for USDA's local and regional procurement program. I do think we could do better. First, I urge the conferees to create a single budget category for all Food for Peace implementation costs, regardless of whether we're using U.S. or locally procured food. Second, I'd urge adoption of the Senate amendment to authorize market-based assistance with the concurrence of USAID under the Food for Progress program. And third, I urge the conferees to adopt the Senate amendments to the McGovern-Dole program, which would align food deliveries with the recipient country's school year and allow for locally procured food. And finally, I strongly recommend that the conferees extend the existing 25% cap on U.S. contributions to the Global Crop Diversity Trust. And by making these improvements, we can advance American interests while reducing duplication, while reducing waste. We can reach more people. We can contribute to the growth of agricultural markets. We can, of course, expand opportunities for U.S. investment and trade, and we can break the cycle of dependency. And this is what we were sent here to do, and I know we will deliver, and I thank you again, Chairman, very much.
Representative Engel.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That works. And Ranking Member Stabenow, I'm glad to see fellow members of the House do so well on the other side of the Capitol. So it's nice to see you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Chairman Conaway as well, and Ranking Member Peterson, who is my unofficial advisor on agriculture, due to a mutual friend that we both have. Naming my wife. I want to thank you for your hard work on this important bill. This morning, I'm going to focus mostly on Title III, which is within the jurisdiction of the Foreign Affairs Committee, in which I serve as ranking member. But first, I want to voice my concern about another piece of the Farm Bill, the troubling proposed changes to SNAP. I strongly oppose all cuts to SNAP and the proposed new work requirements for SNAP recipients. This program is a lifeline for 40 million low-income Americans. Instead of protecting SNAP, this bill, the way I read it, would take billions away from children, seniors, veterans, individuals with disabilities, and working families struggling to make ends meet. This proposal would hurt the neediest Americans, and I urge its removal. Now I'd like to turn to the Foreign Affairs section of the bill, and I want to first object to the inclusion of Section 9121 in the conference report. This provision would loosen restrictions on methyl bromide, a highly toxic chemical, and ozone-depleting substance. The 2005 Montreal Protocol, which the United States signed, phased out the use of this chemical around the world. This provision would likely cause the United States to violate this international agreement, which is why the Foreign Affairs Committee should have been consulted on the matter. So I request that Section 9121 be stricken from conference negotiations on jurisdictional grounds. Next, I'd like to discuss international food assistance. Food security, as the Chairman mentioned, is critical in international security. Nearly 800 million people around the world live without the certainty that their families will have enough to eat on a day-to-day basis. Without reliable access to food, it is much harder for a country to achieve peace, stability, and prosperity. In many parts of the world, floods and droughts lead to greater food insecurity, amplifying the effects of the conflict. So we have a security interest and a moral obligation on trying to tackle this problem as part of our foreign policy. International food international food aid is a critical tool in this effort. In the last Farm Bill, we were able to improve food assistance through common sense reforms, including measures that increased USAID's flexibility to improve the type of assistance that works best for each community. And we were able to reduce a reliance on the wasteful practice of monetization, a multi-step process whereby we provide NGOs with food to sell on the open market rather than making more efficient direct investments in these NGOs' efforts. I am pleased to see these reforms in both versions of Title III this year. These changes have proven successful over the last 5 years, and we should continue this progress. Of these important reforms, a few stand out as my top priorities on this year's final bill. We must extend authority for local and regional procurement, adopt the Senate amendments to the McGovern-Dole program, which would help ensure assistance around the world it was more acceptable and gets to those who need it when they need it, and keep the 25% cap on U.S. contributions to the Global Crop Diversity Trust. These provisions are essential to continuing successful international food assistance. So I look forward to working with my fellow conferees from both chambers as we continue to combat hunger in this country and abroad, and I thank you for your courtesy.
Representative Walker.
Thank you. Let me start by showing appreciation to Chairman Conaway and the members of the Agricultural Committee for their work on this year's Farm Bill. Appreciate all the hard work. In the House-passed version of H.R. 2 were meaningful reforms, such as improvement to broad-based categorical eligibility, the inclusion of real work but minimal work requirements, and better enforcement of child support requirements. These provisions would help reduce the cycle of poverty by changing the status quo that is failing too many of our citizens trapped in poverty. These reforms are not only extremely important, but also widely supported by the majority of Americans. In fact, a recent poll showed that 82% of voters support increased work requirements on food stamps. Yet some of our colleagues, even today, said the House bill version is cruel. I'll tell you what's cruel. Not being able to lift people out of poverty is cruel. I'll tell you what's cruel. Cruel is going from 17 million to 42 million people on the SNAP full-time benefit program. I'll tell you what else is cruel. The mindset that we have in Washington, D.C., that we measure success by how many people we can add to a program as opposed to how many people we can provide hope and transition off. There are other meaningful reforms, such as the repeal of the Obama-era WOTUS rule. With the economy thriving, farmers are able to sell products to more and more Americans brought into marketplace, giving farmers the solid foundation that they have been needing. We should include the House-passed reform measures I previously mentioned and solidify these programs for generations to come. I encourage my colleagues to support these common-sense reforms, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Congressperson Plaskett, please.
Good morning and thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to try to move our agricultural policy forward and to see that there is adequate support and a secure safety net for our farmers, for consumers in this country and around the planet. It is unfortunate that the House bill fails to measure up to these goals. The nutrition title in particular provides for a massive and untested system of new requirements on state and local governments that is intended to cut millions of people from nutrition assistance. While the majority touted it as neutral to the budget, it is not neutral to American families, children, and our elderly. It cuts working families, and it goes completely against the safety net, the helping hand that the Farm Bill has always stood for. I, for one, was particularly concerned about a lack of any accommodation for disaster-impacted areas, but unfortunately there was no opportunity to resolve concerns before the bill was rushed through. It doesn't add any help to farmers facing record low income and commodity prices and hardship due to trade retaliation. It does not tackle the opioid epidemic or farmer mental health. It cuts hundreds of millions in mandatory funding out of rural development and energy initiatives by eliminating all mandatory funding for innovative programs like Value-Added Producer Grant Program, the Farmers Market and Local Food Promotion Program. The bill shuts out key elements of agriculture, including farmers and business owners taking advantage of fast-growing markets for local and regional produced food and organic and value-added products. It also adds fees to guaranteed loans that will increase barriers to financing access for everybody. The lack of funding in the area of broadband neglects a major role of agriculture, that being to support rural and underserved areas left behind. The new digital divide is leaving not only farmers, but children in rural and underserved areas behind. And without the Farm Bill support, they may not catch up. The House bill also falls short on assisting beginning, underserved, and veteran farmers, local foods, and organics, to name a few. While we weren't able to secure permanent funding and beginning social advantage farmers in our bill, I applaud my colleagues in the Senate for establishing a new program that would permanently protect resources for generations to come. To keep our agricultural economy strong, the Farm Bill that we are considering today must create economic opportunities for our most chronically underserved farmers. As the sole representative in Congress for the Virgin Islands, I would lastly like to urge that the Farm Bill be fair and equitable to Americans living in territories of the United States. This will require omission of Section 11616 of the House Bill, which seeks to rescind the right of the territories to govern their infrastructure affairs in the same fashion that they've traditionally been afforded with states. It will also require this committee to take care that the territories are fully included in new provisions for our farmers and ranchers, such as Fair Access for Farmers and Ranchers program. I will close by saying that I would very much like to be able to support a final Farm Bill that does support the needs of rural communities I represent, and ask for your support and this conference to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Roberts and Chairman Conway, for your leadership in getting us this far. As we all know, moving a farm bill is a challenging feat. I'm honored to be a member of this conference committee to help get us across the finish line and deliver on our promise to America's farmers. Thank you as well to the staff of the Agriculture Committee for the countless late nights and long hours of hard work to advance the Farm Bill. As a farmer myself, I know the challenges my fellow farmers and all rural Americans face: market swings, changing weather, trade disputes, all things outside the control of our constituents are part of the everyday uncertainty that comes with farming. But we can do our part here today to ensure the Farm Bill is not among those. As a member of the House Agriculture Committee, I'm proud of the work we've done to craft a bill that builds on the risk management tools like crop insurance that were a focal point of the last Farm Bill. One of the top concerns I hear from Kentucky businesses is the shortage of available employees as they look to expand in our booming economy. The House Farm Bill takes steps to lift Americans out of poverty through the best assistance plan I know of, a job. The nutrition title emphasizes the importance of getting Americans back to work and provides a path for them to learn valuable job skills through training programs that will help them and fill the needs of employers. Specifically to Kentuckians, I'd like to highlight two important provisions. First, the last Farm Bill opened the door to bringing industrial hemp back to America through the state-based pilot programs. As Kentucky's Agriculture Commissioner, I had the pleasure of establishing the very first of those programs, and it has been wildly successful. I'm proud to work with Leader McConnell to take the next step to advance this valuable commodity by expanding the ability to grow industrial hemp by removing it from the controlled substances list and placing it under the USDA's jurisdiction like other commodities. I'm also thankful to House Judiciary Chairman Goodlatte for all of his work on industrial hemp throughout this process. I encourage this conference to adopt that language and provide farmers with another tool in their toolbox. Another provision Kentuckians have brought to my attention is language in the Senate bill pertaining to the Rural Utility Service Cushion of Credit program. While there are concerns about the sustainability of that program, I hope for an equitable solution that addresses the future of the program while respecting the financial commitments made in the past. Again, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your dedication to rural America and the opportunity to play a role in finalizing this crucial legislation. I look forward to the progress we make
and I yield back my time.
Thank you very much. We have 9 members of the People's House, and we want to welcome you all. Maxine Waters came in under Ronald Reagan. She was after me. I remember when I came in with Senator Leahy, working with President Coolidge. And we have a picture here of Senator Leahy working. Oh, wait a minute, that's Bush. That's Bush 1. All right. I'm going to recognize now Senator Leahy and apologize to the fabulous 9 that are coming up. Senator Leahy.
Thank you, Chairman Roberts. Actually, I got to say, you were so nice to Woodrow Wilson when we'd have those meetings down at the White House.
I didn't agree with him much, but I was nice to him.
That's true. Actually, we're laughing about a picture signing a farm bill when I was chairman, and about this high. The reason President Bush is laughing, he had asked me, Pat, have you read every word of this? And I said, I'm not the one signing it. I've read as much of it as you have. Anyway, I want to thank Chairman Roberts. I want to thank Ranking Member Stabenow. You have worked very, very hard to put together a bipartisan bill. Having been chairman for a couple of these 5-year bills, I know how difficult that is. And one of the things, this is one of the committees, and now we're trying to make the same with the Appropriations Committee, can work in a bipartisan way. And if we do, we find out we're not here to help Republicans or Democrats. We're here to help the farmers, the nation, everybody else who relies on this bill. It affects every one of us. It's crucial to our economy, our environment, our national security interests. America's farmers are struggling with both weather and trade disturbances. Vermont dairy farmers, a crisis has driven many out of business. And I think what we're doing is trying to address that, all of them. And it must also ensure our nutrition programs remain strong and accessible to those who need them. In the wealthiest, most nation on earth, people shouldn't be going hungry. And I look at what Senators McGovern and Senator Dole did as they worked together. And I think we're trying to do this. And we've tried in the bipartisan Senate bill to fulfill these goals. And I hope that we'll be able to work out the differences with the House bill, because I'm afraid that what's in there could exacerbate hunger. We talk about rural development and economic development. And I think this recognizes the fact that every one of us, no matter where our district or our state, we have rural areas. And I'm thankful the House and Senate bill provide strong funding for agriculture conservation easement programs. The organic farm, when I was chairman, we wrote that bill. It now totals $50 billion a year. We want to make sure that continues. And I'll put my full statement on the record, Mr. Chairman. And I compliment you. I'll just say that again. Senator Stabenow. Bless you.
Thank you.
And I try to emulate you. I go to the same barber you do.
I truly appreciate those comments. Representative Bishop.
To the chairs, ranking members, those who are paid to sit here and listen to this, thank you for this opportunity. And looking in front of me, I also want to thank you very much for supporting the timber industry. Look, since most of the federal forest lands are in the West, we have a unique opportunity. This year, the air quality in my home state, my district, my home, was the worst it has ever been. Most of the standards were unhealthy, and it was simply because the particulate matter was so heavy. As California burned down, the wind currents brought it all into Utah. I breathed in California's destruction. And that was a wonderful opportunity that those of you who live east of Denver will never actually get to see. One of the issues that we have in front of us is the Resilient Forest Act that was introduced by my colleague to my left here, who's still the only professional forester here in Capitol Hill. And it was an act that was done working with the Forest Service and local governments and industry and the Ag Committee and the stakeholders and land managers to try and find in a bipartisan way, and truly was, because we went to first the Obama administration Forest Service and then the Trump administration Forest Service and asked, what are the tools you need to cut out the red tape and expand the pace and scale of actual forest management? Forest Service has a goal of working over 20% of the forest a year. They get 2%. So what is it you need to actually solve that problem? And that is what is in this particular bill. We have a chance, an opportunity to do meaningful forest reform right now. This summer, lives have been lost, homes have been destroyed, firefighters from my state have been killed. We can't do that. That cannot be our legacy. That cannot be a cross we have to bear. It is something that we can now solve and move forward if we have a robust forestry title as part of this year's Farm Bill. I truly hope we can get to that, because there's a solution out there that must be met before the rest of the West burns down and we have to breathe in. We have to breathe it all in. I yield back. And thank you, Senator.
Representative Grijalva.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here today to urge my colleagues in this conference to remove what I perceive and many perceive to be erroneous, misguided, and harmful provisions in this Farm Bill. Not only would the House-passed Farm Bill hurt low-income families, deny school breakfast and lunch from children across this nation, I think Congress has to come to the realization that we cannot end hunger through forced attrition of those people that are in need, and it also would severely undermine two of our nation's most successful and popular conservation laws, the Endangered Species Act and the National Environmental Policy Act. Pesticides are known to have caused the dramatic decline of numerous species, birds, bees, fish, butterflies, and under the current law, it's illegal to spray a field with pesticide if endangered species are present. Alarmingly, one writer in the House bill would overturn the status quo and to actually allow a person to spray a pesticide directly on an endangered species, even with the knowledge that it would kill it. That's not the only attack on science and sound environmental management in the House bill. The forestry title includes sweeping exemptions from NEPA's environmental review and public participation requirements, and removes the requirement for the EPA, the Forest Service, and the Bureau of Land Management to consult with expert wildlife agencies on how its actions will negatively impact imperiled wildlife. Not only does this undermine science, it just really doesn't make any sense. One additional point to these harmful environmental provisions that are included in the House versions, there is an absence of protection for farm workers who are the essential workforce for much of what is in this legislation. I would urge removal of the Pesticide Registration Improvement Enhancement Act of 2017, PREA 4, from the conference report, and doing so and support passing the Senate version separately in order to maintain revised worker protection standards. I believe we all can agree that's essential to keep farm workers, including many children, because farm workers are the only classification of workers in this country that are exempted from child labor laws, healthy and safe from pesticide exposure. I think, Mr. Chairman, we have a responsibility to be good stewards of our environment, uphold the strong protections of ESA, NEPA, and protect our farm workers. I urge my colleagues to remove these poison pill riders that are in the House version and move on to a farm bill that actually does what the whole intention of this effort has been, is to pass a farm bill that works best for all Americans. With that, I yield back.
Representative Westerman.
Chairman Conaway and Roberts, ranking members Peterson and Stabenow, thank you for convening today's meeting. I cannot stress enough how important an on-time farm bill is to the people of the 4th District of Arkansas and to rural America as a whole. Being a forester, the bulk of my comments will center around Title VIII. The nation behaves well if it treats the natural resources as assets, which it must turn over to the next generation, increased and not impaired in value. Those are not my words, but the words of Teddy Roosevelt in 1910. One of our greatest natural resources is our 192 million acres of national forest. We are not turning this asset over to the next generation increased. We're turning it over impaired, and we must change our behavior. Our national forests are unhealthy. They're too dense, they're infested with insects and disease, and they're burning up at record rates with record intensity. Roosevelt also said, "A people without children would face a hopeless future. A country without trees is almost as helpless." In our western states, on many of our public lands, we are creating this helpless situation as we are losing more trees than we are growing. Forests are essential to our quality of life and globally to life itself. Trees provide clean air, clean water, wildlife habitat, and many other benefits to society. The problem is that we are loving our trees to death. We've mismanaged our forest with a hands-off approach, except to put out fires, which is nature's way of managing the forest. We've been on the wrong management path for several decades, and we have a long road to recovery. It is imperative that we change our course immediately, give our land managers every tool available to implement science-based management, and insist that they use those tools. This Farm Bill is an opportunity to give our resource manager those tools. By implementing all of the forest management policies found in the bipartisan House-passed forestry title, along with the very good bipartisan Senate provisions included in this bill, we can begin to change course on the mismanagement that makes these fires much worse than they should be. Many of these provisions overlap, such as the Timber Innovation Act, that will promote research in critical new markets for our amazing, renewable natural resource. We have waited long enough, and the fires are raging. We need to demonstrate to the American people that Congress is willing to use every tool in the toolbox to fight catastrophic wildfire and make our forest healthy. A problem without proposing a solution is whining. That was another one of Roosevelt's quotes. We have solid bipartisan forestry solutions in both the Senate and House versions of the Farm Bill. Let's stop the whining, take action, and include all of these provisions for the sake of our forest, our environment, and our future. Chairman, ranking members, thank you for the time. I urge the swift passage of a Farm Bill which works for rural Arkansans, for our forest, and our farmers and ranchers across the country.
Representative Abraham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, farming has always been a very active part of my life, and I'm honored to serve the people of Louisiana and give them a voice. And this Farm Bill is probably the most important bill that we in our generation here will pass for our farmers, foresters, ranchers, because it just simply gives them stability and support for long-term success. Food security is national security. I, along with others, have called our farmers the thin green line. That's why we must get this bill right. With labor demands at an all-time high, work-eligible population currently on the sidelines, we need to get some encouragement to get them into the game. We're asking that adults who have no physical or mental abilities, that are not raising small children, simply to meet the taxpayer halfway by working, going to school, or volunteering only 20 hours a week. It is a reasonable request that gets people to work and will lessen their dependence on welfare. Success for me, Mr. Chairman, is by allowing people to thrive and live independently, not depending on the government. We successfully moved away from this cotton stacks program. We put cotton into ARC and PLC. That's helped shorten the decline of the commodity. Similarly, we strengthened the margin protection program for our small dairies that were struggling to survive. It's a priority of mine that these successes become permanent parts of the ag policy. Crop insurance must remain available and affordable for all our farmers. It just gives a safety net in times of disaster. A sudden death in the family can unravel a family farm that's been running for generations. We can fix this with the bill and preserve the family farm, a vital part of the fabric of rural America. And I support including nieces, nephews, and first cousins in the definition of actively engaged. I support using the RMA data as the best source of the data available to construct these programs. And finally, we must invest in research and technology. This is the crux and the heart of agriculture, and I look forward to continuing to work with this conference. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Representative Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a farmer, I appreciate the opportunity to once again serve as a conferee on the Farm Bill. It is a critical issue to our country and to our community. And my goal, my priority is to make sure that California's Central Valley is on a fair and equal playing field. And one of the biggest issues that we face in the Central Valley is the lack of adequate water storage. And while I know that that is not addressed in the Farm Bill, the programs that support specialty crops provide critical support during these times of drought. In addition to being a farmer, I'm also a veteran. And as I understand how important it is that we support proactive measures that encourage veteran populations in need of more and better jobs to get involved with the agriculture industry. That is desperately in need of a new next generation of farmers, and I'm proud to work on that with Mr. Walls on the Vets to Farm Act. The Margin Protection Program, MPP, this bill will have an opportunity to enhance the Margin Protection Program, which improves catastrophic coverage for our dairy producers, allowing them to better manage risk in the national average margin between milk prices and feed costs, which lending to stability in uncertain markets. I'm supportive of that approach, which was introduced by my colleague and friend, Mr. Valadeo, that would better calculate costs and increase coverage from $4 to $5 in both Tier 1 and Tier 2 of the program. I'm hopeful that we keep that in as a compromise as the Margin Protection Program. Additionally, I'm hopeful that we will prioritize mechanization research and development to ensure that our crops thrive for years to come. We can also enhance the Specialty Crop Research Initiative, which, paired with a designated citrus trust fund, will aid in finding new ways to combat pest and disease prevention. EQIP is an important issue in our area. We want to make sure that we ensure existing USDA biomass and bioenergy programs allow for the inclusion of ag waste like vines and trees, as well as continued support for pollinators and existing USDA programs and interagency initiatives. We must also avoid politically motivated provisions that undermine states' rights to govern or regulate themselves. Whether it's an animal welfare issue, food labeling, or otherwise, it's my hope that we can agree that federal power grabs in the guise of constitutional authority is not good policy for the country. We also must not forget that our nation's sovereign Native American tribes, the House Farm Bill has several provisions for tribes, including opening up new rural development grants and providing better forest management provisions, which are especially important as we face an unprecedented wildfire season. In conclusion, my Central Valley District is one of the top producing agriculture areas in the nation. And as a local farmer, I know how vital it is for my constituents and our nation that we protect our farmers and our farmland. California farmers must be treated fairly and promoted in the 2018 Farm Bill, and I look forward to working with all of you as we conclude our deliberations. Thank you, and I yield back.
My apologies, Congressman Dunn. I recognize you now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and ranking members. I'm proud to be here this morning as a member of the 2018 Farm Bill Conference Committee. Our negotiations throughout the conference process and the final bill that we produce will have a dramatic effect on American farmers, ranchers, and foresters for years to come. I'm also proud to join my friend and colleague, Congressman Yoho, as one of the two members from Florida representing the great state on this committee. Since being elected to Congress, I've had the opportunity to travel the 2nd Congressional District, talking to farmers, ranchers, and foresters about our national agricultural policy. They've told me that as a whole, both the House and the Senate versions of the Farm Bill do a great deal to expand what's already working and bring needed reforms to what's not working. Both bills achieve much of what is needed to strengthen our agricultural economy. However, we must maintain what we've achieved in the House version to ensure that the farm safety net continues to provide a level of certainty during times of recession and loss. I have serious concerns about some of the provisions included in the Senate bill that could limit the farmers' access to critical federal resources. Agriculture is a risky business. A farmer's livelihood is on the line every season. If the crop isn't ready to harvest when the market is right, they may not earn enough food to put on their own table, let alone replant so that we can put food on our table next season. Furthermore, to protect the security of livestock producers, I'm very supportive of the House version authorizing funding for the Foot and Mouth Disease Bank, feral swine eradication, and market access programs that expand U.S. agricultural exports. While not addressed in either bill, I hope that my colleagues and I can continue to work on a solution to the burden placed on livestock haulers by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration hours of service rules. My friend and colleague Ted Yoho has a bill, H.R. 6079, that offers a fix on this issue, and I hope that we'll get that bill across the finish line soon. Also, it's imperative that the final bill include the vital resources needed to research and combat invasive pests and diseases. Florida's diverse climate means that we're often ground zero when these disasters strike, and every federal dollar spent to combat invasive pests makes the American people safer and our food supply more secure. I'm confident that we can continue to invest in healthy forests, promote new innovations in biotechnology, and make critical reforms to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. We're experiencing the greatest economy in modern history with record low unemployment. Maintaining the SNAP status quo simply doesn't make sense. We should all want to incentivize a work-capable population to re-enter the labor force and get them back on track to leading productive, fulfilling lives. Finally, and importantly, I know we can deliver this bill to the American people on time, and we must do exactly that. I look forward to working with the members of this committee to make that happen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Congressperson Bustos.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to also thank the ranking members here today. I look forward to working with you to reach a timely conclusion to negotiations that will provide rural America with much-needed certainty. I come to this conference wearing two hats. I'm both a designated member from the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and also as well as a member from the House Ag Committee. From a transportation perspective, I'm glad that this legislation reauthorizes regional economic development agencies under our purview. These agencies do important work to address economic and social challenges in rural America. That includes making investments in small-town infrastructure, supporting education and job training, and spurring business development. However, there are two controversial Clean Water Act provisions in the House bill that the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee would like highlighted. The first waives Clean Water Act protections over water bodies associated with the use of pesticides near navigable waters. The second repeals the 2015 Clean Water Rule in relation to the Clean Water Act's jurisdiction. Both provisions fall solely within the jurisdiction of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and the provisions and their inclusion in this bill are opposed by the ranking Democrat of the committee and the ranking Democrat on the subcommittee of Water Resources and Environment. Now, as a member of the House Ag Committee, I also understand the necessity of this bill in strengthening several key provisions. This includes protecting crop insurance, helping our next generation of producers, and ensuring our conservation title incentivizes nutrient management, including programs like cover crops. We must pass a farm bill that supports all of our regions and all of our family farmers equally. This farm bill is a tremendous opportunity to make sure rural America has the tools it needs to succeed. That is why I'm pleased to see provisions I introduced and fought for included in both the Senate and the House farm bills, and I encourage their inclusion in the final bill. I'm talking about funding for energy programs that create new jobs in rural America, supporting the creation of a rural health liaison in the USDA to improve rural health care, improving opioid addiction treatment, and creating new loan programs to spur the spread of broadband to all of our communities. The decisions we're going to make here matter. They matter to hardworking family farmers who have seen commodity prices dropping for years. They matter to the 265,000 children who could lose free school lunches. They matter to small towns that count on their partnership with rural development to build a future in the heartland. So let's make this moment matter. Let's deliver a farm bill that strengthens America. I again want to thank the chairman and the ranking members for holding today's meeting. With that, I yield back.
Last but not least, Representative Gibbs.
Thank you, Chairman. And I want to also thank Chairman Conaway for his hard work on this bill.
I represent Ohio's 7th Congressional District, and I'm also a farmer. I'm excited to get this farm bill enacted before the deadline of September 30th. It is important to my farmer constituents out there because they need the certainty to ensure the programs to protect our rural economy and conservation initiatives to protect the environment are going to be there. We also need to make sure American consumers have access to affordable and safe food supply, and they, you know what? They want that grown as close to home as can be possible here and make sure it's grown here in the United States. The Farm Bill helps ensure that this gets done. Some of my initiatives I've been working on are included in the bill. The bill removes the requirements for MPDS permitting for pesticides already approved by the EPA under FIFRA law, reducing bureaucratic burdens on farmers, ranchers, and mosquito control districts. Also included within the House Farm Bill is Reducing Regulatory Burdens Act, which eliminates duplicate federal requirements while fostering a continued protection of public health and environment for our national food supply. I urge you to maintain the House version of the 2018 Farm Bill that repeals the 2015 Waters of the United States rule, giving unelected bureaucrats at the EPA the power to broadly interpret what is a navigable waterway, and that proposal also erodes private property rights, and I would argue can endanger the good environmental practices and protections we put into place earlier and farmers are adopting. Conservation Reserve Program, I think from local economies benefit from production of agriculture when it grows, from ag retailers to equipment manufacturers to grain handlers, farming on the productive land we are blessed with helps local communities thrive. This Farm Bill should prioritize the working lands like the EQIP program, the CSP, and keep good farmland in production to maintain market share. I'm concerned that the cuts to rural electrics in the Senate version of this Farm Bill, I am told it could cost Ohioans over $20 million in the coming years. It's bad policy not only for the state of Ohio, but across America. Rural development, the health of our whole economy is dependent on a healthy rural America, and 2018 Farm Bill must maintain and strengthen the rural development title of the Farm Bill to reaffirm the importance of these programs. Crop insurance, maintain current crop insurance programs for risk management tools for producers, including a 10-year rolling average with the ability to drop substantial crop losses for claims for crop yields. I also fully support the increased funding for food and mouth disease vaccines. The 4R-based program, right source, right rate, right time, right place research, the high priority research area. This will allow industry, USDA, academia to work together to research necessary measures to outcomes results of these practices both economically and environmentally. Ag research should continue to be a priority in the 2018 Farm Bill through increased public and private partnerships. I also encourage increased watershed collaboration. There's a growing interest across the country from agricultural stakeholders regarding water quality, reduction of nutrient loads, and overall collaboration with utility members. Such collaboration can enhance the goals of the Clean Water Act while providing benefits to farmers, landowners, farmers. I also fully support the provisions in the SNAP program in the House bill that helps people get the job skills they need to help them improve their status, life, and quality of life. And so I encourage you to get this done as fast as you can, Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you. That will conclude our conference meeting today. To my fellow members, I appreciate your involvement in this process. Together we have got to make tough choices. If you've heard it once, now you will hear it again. We must provide certainty and predictability for our farmers, ranchers, growers, their families, and our rural communities, not to mention everybody in this country. Meeting adjourned.
Very good.
We're not done yet. This is just an important step.
Well, I meant just with
yeah, no, there's no logistics. Yeah.
Great job. Thank you.